Two planes are heading to Venezuela carrying migrants deported by the Trump administration. These are the first Venezuelan nationals repatriated since Mr. Trump's return to the White House. Leonardo Rocha has this report.
The flights are run by a Venezuelan airline. They're part of a wider government program to repatriate some of those who fled the country over the past decade. Reports say some members of Venezuela's most powerful criminal gang are among the passengers. The two countries haven't had diplomatic relations for years, and Caracas refused to cooperate with Washington's deportation plans. The political differences remain, but President Nicolás Maduro made a deal with the US last month to accept the return of deported migrants. Mr. Maduro, in return, released 6 American citizens who'd been in Venezuelan prisons for months.
The trial has opened in New York State of a man charged with the attempted murder of Salman Rushdie. The frenzied stabbing attack left the author blind in one eye. 27-year-old Hadi Matar has pleaded not guilty. Rushdie was about to give a lecture in the state 2.5 years ago when Matar rushed onto the stage. The prosecutor told the court the defendant plunged his knife deliberately and forcefully multiple times. He said Rushdie had nearly died from losing so much blood. World News from the BBC. The UN has suspended its operations in Yemen's northern Sada region, a stronghold of the Houthi movement, due to concerns over staff safety. Most of the detentions of UN personnel last month happened in Sada. The Security Council is due to discuss the situation in Yemen later this week. President Macron says France is back in the race as a centre for artificial intelligence. At a global summit in Paris, he's touted his country and the EU as a destination for investment. He told delegates France would announce its new plans on AI on Tuesday.
This strategy will be a unique opportunity for Europe to accelerate, to simplify our regulations, to deepen the single market, and to invest as well in computing capacities. We need more Europe, and we have to provide a bigger domestic market to all the startups when they start as Europeans.
He praised AI as a tool for progress, adding it should be used in the service of humanity. Only a handful of countries have hit a UN deadline to submit plans on cutting greenhouse gas emissions to help keep global temperature rises below a key threshold. That's despite warnings the world is fast running out of time to keep such rises below 1.5 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. The threshold is seen as critical to help limit ever more extreme impacts on the world. 2024 was the first single year when temperatures exceeded that figure. Scientists say the Earth's inner core may be changing. The planet's iron-nickel centre is thought to be shaped like a ball, but scientists now believe its edges may be deformed in some places. Researchers say changes appear to happen where the edge of the solid inner core touches the extremely hot liquid metal outer core. BBC News.
You're listening to News Hour from the BBC World Service with me, Sean Lane. Hamas says the Israeli hostages due to be released this coming Saturday may not now be released, in its words, until further notice pending the occupation's compliance and retroactive fulfilment of the past week's obligations. The occupation there refers to Israel. Among the reasons being cited are Palestinian accusations that Israel is continuing some aspects of its operation in Gaza in violation of the ceasefire. In turn, Israel's Defense Minister, Israel Katz, has accused Hamas of breaking the ceasefire deal. He said he was putting Israeli defense forces on the highest alert, and within the last few minutes, the Israeli government has said it is significantly raising the alert level for its troops all around the Gaza area. The mother of one hostage still being held in Gaza, though, accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of wanting the deal to fail.
הודעת חמאס על עצירת ההסכם היא תוצאה ישירה של ההתנהלות המופקרת של נתניהו.
Hamas's announcement to halt the agreement is a direct result of Netanyahu's reckless behaviour. Today, it is already clear that Netanyahu's deliberate foot-dragging, the lack of a mandate for the delegation, and his unnecessary boasting are sabotaging the agreement. If Netanyahu does not send a delegation and give it a full mandate to close Phase 2 and bring everyone back at once, he is sentencing my Matan, and all the heroes who are still surviving this Holocaust to death in agony.
Speaking in the Knesset, Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, a member of the coalition representing one of the smaller and hardline parties, vowed that Israel would now take control of Gaza.
The time has come to completely stop the transfer of humanitarian aid to Hamas. The time has come to occupy the Gaza Strip, to seize territory from them permanently as a response to the terrible massacre and to prevent the next massacre.
While behind the flurry of accusations and mutual recriminations lies the question of how much fuel President Trump's remarks last week added to the arguments of hardliners on both sides. Speaking to Fox News on Monday, Mr. Trump said Palestinians would not have a right of return to Gaza under his plans for the US to take over and renovate the territory.
No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better... In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them, because if they have to return now, it'll be years before you could ever... It's not habitable.
Well, the BBC's Maura Davis is in Jerusalem, and when we spoke a little earlier, I asked him first about Hamas's statement to suspend the hostage releases. Should it be taken at face value?
I don't think they're very strong reasons. One of the reasons they've given is that Israel is not allowing enough aid into Gaza under the ceasefire agreement. But there's no doubt that multiple amounts of aid compared to what was getting in before are now being transferred through various crossings into Gaza. Hamas also accuses Israel of firing against individuals and positions in Gaza, leading to some fatalities during the ceasefire, and there certainly have been breaches of the ceasefire. Israel says that people were going in places they weren't allowed to be going too close to the border fence, etc. And that is clearly has happened. But the ceasefire, by and large, has held. It has produced results. 21 hostages released already, 500 Palestinians, even more released from Israeli jails. So Hamas's reasons have been completely rejected by Israel. Israel is furious. It has said that Hamas is completely reneging on the deal, and it has told the IDF, the Israeli military, to be on the border and ready for whatever may come next. And of course, if the ceasefire collapses, that would be a resumption of the war.
We've heard two contrasting views from in Israel. We've just heard the voice of a mother blaming Benjamin Netanyahu for this. She has a daughter who is currently held as a hostage. And we've also heard from a member of Mr. Netanyahu's coalition government, the finance minister, Mr. Smotrich, saying effectively the only answer to this now is to go and basically take over the territory of Gaza completely.
Yeah, well, look, that far right-wing voice has always been there on Mr. Netanyahu's shoulder. There are people in this government who, even if the first phase of the ceasefire had been completed, what they want is a resumption of the war, because their view is that Hamas is not yet defeated militarily and Israel has to go in and finish the job. The families think that is the way that Mr. Netanyahu is leaning anyway. The majority of the families accuse Mr. Netanyahu of making noises about wanting an agreement, but his priority is to defeat Hamas, and many of the families have accused him of dragging his heels, of not being really interested in a continuation of the ceasefire agreement. So these are really, really quite dangerous times, I think, because the perception was that we would finish the first phase of the ceasefire. There would then be talks about moving to a second phase in which more hostages would be released. And for Israelis and Palestinians, that is the key thing, more people released from captivity.
Has the credibility of those talks been undermined by President Trump's comments last week at the news conference he held with Mr. Netanyahu at the White House, which effectively seemed to say that actually America was taking charge of this process?
Undoubtedly, I think Mr. Trump's comments have completely muddied the waters. His latest comments on a Fox News network were that he was asked, would any Palestinians who leave Gaza be allowed to return? And he said, no, they wouldn't. I mean, that is a red rag to a bull for most Palestinians and their Arab allies. And again, what this response from Hamas, this statement from Hamas, may be their way of pushing back at what Mr. Trump has said. And Mr. Trump has said on several occasions in the last few days that he has got a very odd view about the future for Gaza, which would involve the displacement, the relocation of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. That is simply not on for either Hamas or any other Palestinian faction.
That's the BBC's Maura Davis in Jerusalem. Hamas has said subsequently that the door remains open for Saturday hostage-prisoner exchange depending on how Israel responds. Well, Aaron David Miller, now at the Carnegie Endowment of Foreign Affairs think tank, spent a quarter of a century inside the US State Department under presidents from Jimmy Carter to George W. Bush. Is this a bump on the track or the beginning of a derailment?
I mean, I still think both sides, and remember, there's fundamentally no trust here. These were indirect negotiations, and you have two parties that are pledged to one another's mutual destructions. Frankly, I'm surprised that things have gone as smoothly as they have through these 5 rounds. I think that what's new here, though, is the backstory, and I think it's hard to know why Hamas has come out with this statement. I mean, it's somewhat welcome news that they've given the negotiators an additional 5 days to work this stuff out. I think Hamas is concerned about 2 things. Number one, Trump's statements clearly have given them a massive propaganda advantage. I mean, essentially what the president has said is, well, we're not going to impose a Nakba on you. We're not going to force you to leave, presumably. But we're going to make it so attractive for you. Gaza is going to be so great that you won't want to come back, that you're going to end up somewhere else. And permanent relocation is simply another buzzword for another catastrophe. So I think that's part of it. The other part I think that Hamas is concerned about is whether or not phase 1, 33 hostages returned for almost 1,700 Palestinian prisoners, is ever going to get to phase 2, which would compel an end to the war, the withdrawal of Israeli forces, and the return of the remaining hostages.
And we heard one of the mothers speaking to reporters earlier today of a hostage saying she wants Prime Minister Netanyahu to give his negotiating team that he sent to Qatar some kind of instructions. In other words, the implication is he sent them there for appearance's sake. He isn't serious about negotiating.
Oh, I think there's no question about that. He's changed the character of the negotiating team. And I think he now has the imprimatur, the validation of an American president with respect to the reality that the administration seems to be endorsing the prime minister's view that Hamas has to, not only does it have to be destroyed as a military force, but as a governing entity over Gaza. And that coincides with not only Mr. Netanyahu's political needs, but the demands of his right-wing constituents who have threatened to, 2 parties in particular, one has left the government, one is threatening to do so if Netanyahu does not resume the war after phase 1. So all of this is swirling around. I think the president's statements, we're dealing with a terrorist organization here that has taken hostages and willfully killed them. But there's no question that the president's statements have not only emboldened Hamas, they've also emboldened Israel's right wing. And those sorts of signals, that kind of support is not good for the implementation of this first phase, let alone getting to the second.
The hope held out to Palestinians has always been that this could be some kind of very slow progress, but nonetheless progress towards the idea of some kind of separately governed Palestinian state. I mean, that looks further away than ever now, doesn't it?
Absolutely, because the President of the United States is essentially disaggregating Gaza from the West Bank. And in that press conference, he said that that the administration will be making another statement on the West Bank within 4 weeks. It would not surprise me if the president decides to basically pronounce that the majority of that territory, now controlled by the Israelis, 60%, will remain under Israel's control, leaving a Palestinian entity, even if he said the word state, on the remaining 40%. So no, this is these signals are undermining American credibility and certainly doing a lot of damage to the credibility of America's Arab partners, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, and the Saudis.
The thing that perhaps is surprising from this side of the Atlantic in the UK is that so many other voices who have taken active involvement in the Middle East seem relatively passive in all of this and certainly are not speaking out, possibly for fear of inflaming the US administration on other issues. But one would have thought this one would have seemed quite fundamental to, for example, a lot of Europeans.
Look, if we're talking about the vaunted international community or the Arab world, over the last 15 months, we've seen a degree of violence inflicted on Palestinians, and of course, in the wake of October 7th, on Israelis, and yet not a single Arab state, certainly not Israel's treaty partners, Egypt, Jordan, nor any Arab state has chosen to stand up, speak up. Well, speaking up is easy, but not breaking relations. And now you see it even more clearly. As far as the Europeans are concerned, I mean, the international community is too divided, too distracted, too preoccupied to actually move decisively. It would have to bring pressure not only against Israel, but against the United States. And it seems to me under these circumstances, that's simply not going to happen.
Will the ceasefire deal limp on?
I'm sorry?
Will the ceasefire deal limp on?
I think it still is in the interest of both Hamas and Israel to go through phase one. But it's almost inconceivable right now, barring some fundamental change in the calculation of the United States, Hamas, or Israel, that the heavy lifts required in phase two are going to be taken.
That's Aaron David Miller from the Foreign Affairs think tank, the Carnegie Endowment in Washington, D.C., talking to the BBC World Service. This is NewsHour. Coming up, Renée Zellweger on opening Bridget Jones's diary for a fourth time.
It's 25 years on. Everything's changed. Society's changed. Women's expectations for themselves and from other people have changed. And, I think our values have shifted just a little bit.
We are about to embark on an adventure.
You sure you're up to this?
I'm your girl.
That's coming up on NewsHour in the next half an hour. Our headline so far, Hamas says it's delaying the next planned release of hostages, accusing Israel of violating the Gaza ceasefire. 2 planes are heading to Venezuela, carrying the first migrants deported by the Trump administration. And the trials opened in New York State of a man charged with trying to murder the author, Salman Rushdie, in a frenzied stabbing attack which left him blind in one eye. This is Sean Lay with NewsHour from the BBC World Service. Governments around the world have threatened countermeasures after President Donald Trump said he'd imposed 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. Shares in European and Asian steelmakers fell, while the value of their US counterparts rose, despite uncertainty over Mr. Trump's real intentions. At a news conference, a spokesperson for the European Union, Olaf Giel, said the EU would wait to see if concrete action followed, but it would oppose any measures threatening the existing EU-US trade relationship.
The EU sees no justification for the imposition of tariffs on its exports. We will react to protect the interests of European businesses, workers and consumers from unjustified measures. The imposition of tariffs would be unlawful and economically counterproductive, especially given the deeply integrated production chains the EU and US established through transatlantic trade and investment.
President Trump also announced he would impose reciprocal tariffs on countries that tax any American imports later this week. Well, William Reinsch is a former official at the US Commerce Department, now at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. When we spoke earlier, I asked him whether US tariffs would be legal.
Well, probably. He hasn't done it yet today. It's mid-afternoon here in Washington, and we're waiting for the announcement of what he threatened yesterday, but it hasn't happened. So it's possible that it will be like a week ago where it will all go away by evening. But there are multiple different laws that you can use. For steel and aluminum, I think that he would probably use a law that in terms of the United States, he could probably get away with it. I mean, keep in mind, no matter what he does, he'll be sued. That's the American way. Anybody can sue anybody for anything, and he'll be sued. There will be people that will be harmed, and they will stand up and complain. My sense is that it will stand up in court. There are other lawyers who think not. The statute that he will probably use is one that gives him authority to act in cases of national emergencies. And so he would have to declare a national emergency, which is what he was going to do last week with Canada and Mexico, and what he did last week with China. So he can do it again on aluminum and steel. I think that statute is pretty broad in terms of what the president can do once he declares the emergency. There are some other people who think that because it doesn't mention the exact word tariff, that he can't use tariffs under the statute. And that's a dispute that'll get settled in court.
I was going to say, it's a case of see you in court. What then about the World Trade Organization, which after all exists to regulate what we call free trade or freer trade or the freest possible trade that people say they want, and presumably has the potential to find against the US and impose penalties? Would that actually make any difference?
Well, first of all, it's not even a close call that we'll be breaking those rules. We'll be breaking our commitments on the limits on our tariffs. And if we are imposing tariffs selectively on particular countries, we'll be breaking the WTO's most fundamental rule that you have to treat everybody the same. So I think we're guilty there. Will it make any difference? Probably not to Trump, sadly. The appellate system in the WTO isn't working anymore. And the result of that is that if you lose a complaint, and the Chinese have already filed one against us for last week's tariffs, if you lose, what countries usually do now is they appeal, but there's no place to appeal because the appellate body has gone away. But by appealing, that allows them to keep on doing what they're doing. So basically, the sinners keep on sinning, and nothing changes unless the WTO comes back and restores the rules.
William Reich from the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, who used to work in the US Commerce Department. Well, Philip K. Bell is president of the Steel Manufacturers Association, the largest member organisation for the industry in the United States. And I asked him if he welcomed the president's decision.
Yes, we do. The Steel Manufacturers Association thinks the president has made a very good decision, and we applaud him for it.
What impact do you hope it have?
Well, I think it'll do two things. One, it will level the playing field with our trading partners, and it will stop unfair trade practices and market distorting practices from countries that basically sell steel for less than market value. It's often subsidized, and it's often done in a way that undermines our workers in our country. You see some of the same things happening in Europe.
Are you at all concerned about what it might do, though, to your members' export markets?
Well, the interesting thing about the U.S. market is about 90% of our exports are within the North American or USMCA region. So it's our hope that these tariffs will incentivize our trade partners in Canada and Mexico to make sure they're not aiding and abetting the unfair trade practices of countries like China and others.
See, I suppose the difficulty for that is if one thinks of the American consumer in all this, might think, well, it's fair enough to protect the steel industry from unfair competition, but if it doesn't have much of a market outside of North America, it probably doesn't have much incentive to see that the best practice is carried out in other parts. In fact, you wouldn't be that worried about the impact on other countries because you don't trade with them.
Yeah, but the situation is that often when trade policies impact other countries, that makes steel get diverted into the U.S. from China. For example, the EU extended its safeguards until June of 2026 because of a practice that China was using where they were shipping steel to third-party countries, mostly in the ASEAN region, and then that steel found its way into the EU. You couple that with reduced demand and then some of the complications of the European CBAM, all of a sudden that steel has to find its place somewhere, and often that's the United States, and often that's through Mexico and Canada.
Which you see as dumping, effectively.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Or evasion, yes.
Tariffs may halt an industry's decline. I just wonder what evidence there is that tariffs can reverse it.
Well, in the United States, we're highly confident that it can reverse it. We have a very modern low-carbon steel industry that's extremely efficient. And we think that the tariffs that Trump implemented during the first administration were largely responsible for about $20 billion of capital investment by American steelmakers to modernize their steel industry and to make it even more efficient.
Well, and of course that doesn't necessarily mean more jobs, does it? I mean, in 2018, when he put the tariff of 25% on all steel imports last time around, 2020, just 2 years later, there were 4,000 fewer steel workers in America.
Yes, but what that's indicative of is the fact that in America, we've allowed our steel industry to be rationalized by market forces. We did not prop up inefficient steel companies with subsidies. We allowed the market to do its work. And because of that, we have the leanest, most efficient steel industry in the world.
Isn't there a danger, though, that if we're getting to reciprocal tariffs, just in the last 20 seconds or so, reciprocal tariffs, that basically that ends up as a trade war and everybody loses?
There is always that possibility, but we hope that they take the president seriously and that they come to the table and agree to some workable solutions. I mean, tariffs are a very powerful tool that President Trump has, and we're glad to see him using them.
That is the president of the Steel Manufacturers Association. That's the largest member organisation for the steel industry in the United States, Philip K. Bell. He was talking about President Trump's decision to impose a 25% tariff on all imports of steel and aluminium. You're listening to NewsHour.
Up-to-date news from the BBC. This is the BBC World Service across Cayman on Bobo FM. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
Have your engine driving like never before with Pure 93, the highest pure octane fuel in Cayman, and available exclusively at Rubis service stations. Pure 93 protects against engine knock, restores lost power and acceleration, cleans fuel injectors, intake valves, removes engine deposits, improves your fuel economy, and it meets international specification requirements for your car. Fill up with Pure 93 now and keep your engine running like new. Fuel the difference with Pure 93. Available exclusively at Rubis.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free to enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets.
Oh, yeah.
Margaritas and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, Maggie!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock, Wednesday. See you there.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
Cayman, Units is here, the island's newest move-in and storage solution. Our robot delivery system allows you to put your unit almost anywhere while providing level loading, uploading, and minimizing shifting. What's even better, no time constraints. Pack at your own pace for moving or store as long as you need. Short-term or long-term, at the home or on the job site. Units, fast, safe, and secure. Check us out at units.ky and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with a care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
When you're on the go, the experienced team at Foster's Pharmacy are here to help. Drop off your prescription while you shop or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
For business, they say location, location, location. But really, there's no better location than right here, right now on your mobile phone or laptop. Buy and sell your pre-owned gear where the island is searching online. Buy and sell on ektrade.com. That's ektrade.com.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio on Bobo FM.
Hello, K-Man, and welcome to Straight Talk here on Bobo 89.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm ELlio Solomon.
And together we welcome you to this, our very first episode of our brand new show together again, but certainly not brand new show in terms of name. Call it a revival, if you will, of Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio. It's a real pleasure to be able to bring this discussion to you, the listening audience, but it's even more of a pleasure, ELlio, to be sitting across the desk from you once again.
Tell me about it.
Feels very nostalgic.
Well, first of all, hearing you talk about, not necessarily new, not old, kind of reminds me of that thing they say about politics, it's good, and it's even better when you have to take it out and warm it back up.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're definitely
to rehash it.
We were good fresh, but we're even better once you heat it up and try it again.
Yeah.
Certainly, again, for those uninitiated, ELlio and I are no strangers to talk radio. As a matter of fact, I would dare say, I won't say we planted the flag, but we certainly followed those who did plant the flag in talk radio in the Cayman Islands. And from our contributions dating back now almost, my goodness, 10, 15 years.
Like that famous sculpture there in America. If we weren't the one holding the flag, we were definitely a part of the group.
Definitely a part of the group, indeed. ELlio and I, obviously, for our first-time listeners, grew up in radio, if we will. We formerly hosted the Rooster Cayman Crosstalk show for a great many years.
Back in 2006.
Back in 2006.
Showing our age, Austin.
Yeah, 2006 is when ELlio started with Rooster and Cayman Crosstalk. I came on board 2000.
I thought you came in November. I started in September, and 3 months later you were there.
Right there with
lightning in a bottle.
Lightning in a bottle. Well, after a great many years of doing that work together, life has a funny way of moving us all on. ELlio went on to politics first, and of course, not being satisfied to let him go on to glory by himself.
You saw me catch that bus.
I quickly followed thereafter. And I think that certainly has provided us with some, I think, very important insight into the way legislation works, the way challenges and controversy works, and the way change happens through the creation of legislation and policy.
Well, funny you say that and bring that up, because I remember a lot of times when we would be doing interviews, one of the things we had candidates across from us, or we had actual persons who were in office, and they'd say, "You guys don't know what you're talking about. You haven't been there."
Quite right. Quite right.
I don't think they can say that anymore.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I think we say that to say that whilst persons may remember us from our previous engagement and previous shows together, I think we both have grown considerably since then.
Absolutely.
And particularly our professional experiences. We've seen both sides of this otherwise political coin and legislative coin. And how do you take issues that begin in general conversation with you, the listening audience, and change or expand those ideas and turn them into policy, and then, of course, into law, and change the world around us. Well, certainly that is our goal here today. We used to say back in the day that Our goal is to enlighten,
educate, enlighten, and elevate.
We believe that is our mission, to educate, enlighten, and elevate the mindset of our listening audience. We will take on issues, challenging issues of the day, and there are a great many of them, particularly now, timing-wise. We've got a general election around the corner on April 30th.
Big referendum.
But we've also, at the same time, got a very important referendum, which 3 questions will be asked. A bit in today's discussion, we'll touch on that a little bit. But we will engage in public education, if you will, and consultation. We don't have all the answers, we never did, but we do believe through our open lines of communication with you, the listening audience, we will get there. We'll get a better understanding of what those issues are, and hopefully that will then arm, particularly the voters in this case first, with the right information so they can go to the polls, not only in choosing their elected representatives, whomever that may be in 2025, but more importantly, be educated and informed on how to answer one of the 3 referendum questions that are deemed items of national importance.
Yeah, and definitely we want to be able to provide a platform here that's going to allow anyone who is, particularly anyone who's running for office, to have a good opportunity to come in, not necessarily engage and feel like you're into some hostile area.
Absolutely.
But be able to come in, sit down, share your views, and we'll actually help you to disseminate that to the public, give the public an opportunity to fully understand exactly what you're standing for, what you want to achieve, and let them be the judge of that.
Indeed. I'm glad you mentioned that. And that's also important in terms of, how are we different? Certainly our goal is not to create a gotcha type of environment, but in fact one in which, conversation flows freely and genuinely, even if our opinions don't always align. I think that has a way of making for some of the best conversations.
Yeah, because you might disagree with what the particular candidate may be saying, but your job at this particular juncture when he or she's in the studio is to make sure that you're aiding them in getting their message out.
Yes.
And again, giving the public an opportunity to hear that and be able to make their informed decision. Now, again, when we're here in the studio, I'm sure we can banter on and take our own views and help to educate, enlighten, and to elevate the public, at least from our perspectives.
Yes.
But clearly when they're here, we want to provide a wonderful environment for them to be able to disseminate their message.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into the, nitty-gritty of any real conversation, I want to
at some point, I might say it again, at some point I want to make sure that, I got to ask you in front of the listening audience, what are some of the things you've been doing for the last 8 years?
Oh, my goodness.
And you're going to have to ask me something similar as well. I'm pretty sure people want to catch up.
No, absolutely. Well, that's what we're here to do on this first episode. Really, it's going to be very casual. We're going to take it slowly, moving into what will be otherwise poignant discussions on a variety of issues. We try to, we'll try to break it down, of course. There's not going to be a free-for-all where we talk about 10 subjects in a single 2-hour window, because then you don't really learn anything that way. We're going to try to take it in small, bite-sized pieces as we go along. But before we do any of that, I think some house cleaning issues are important. And when I say house cleaning, I want to say thank you. There are a number of persons and entities that have been working with ELlio and I in helping us to get to this stage. First and foremost, we have to send out our heartfelt thanks to Bobo 89.9 FM.
89.1.
89.1 FM and Stingray Media for allowing us the platform to reach you in your vehicles in the PM drive from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. We are grateful to Bobo for that opportunity, and hopefully together with our listeners, we can make this another successful talk show.
That's right.
Likewise, we are streaming live right now on YouTube. For that, we want to thank Kenny Rankin and Monster Media. Been working closely with us for making that possible.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I don't know how to direct people as to, how to tune into YouTube or what link.
Well, I got one link from Kenny, and I've been trying to pass that around. But I do, bringing that up. There's a lot of persons, I'm pretty sure, getting ready now, starting to line up in the traffic. If you're actually listening and hearing our voice, want to encourage you to try to share the message with others. People are creatures of habit.
Yes.
And they've not necessarily had the habit of listening to us at 4:30 until 6:30 in the evenings.
Right.
So if you happen to be listening, one of the lucky ones listening to us right now, feel free to share that information. 89.1. Encourage your friends to listen in. But Kenny did share a link. I definitely have a YouTube link, and I'm trying to see if I can pass it around.
All right, terrific. Likewise, if you are tuned in right now and you want to call up, you want to tell us whether or not we're sounding all right, if we're not, if our volume levels are high, low, could be better, please. Listener feedback is encouraged. The phone lines are open. The number to call is 745-2626. We also have an email address. That's host@straighttalk.ky. But we've got so many different things going on at the same time. Maybe we take baby steps and start with the phone lines and work our way up from there.
Yeah, so I just want to say that as well. I mean, obviously, with just firing things up today, it's not going to be in perfect condition, but we assure you over the next couple of days, worst case a week or two, everything should be fine. We want to be broadcasting on Facebook. We want to be broadcasting on YouTube as well as Instagram. And, of course, right here on your favorite channel, 89.1 FM.
Indeed, and thank you for raising that. Facebook and Instagram, they've got requirements. This is our very first show, but we've got to have at least 100 followers if either Facebook or Instagram will allow us to stream on their platform. So, if picking us up on your radio dial is what works for you, then by all means, just tune in from 4:30 to 6:30 from your car, from your home, wherever the case may be. But these days, streaming audio available to persons right on their handheld personal cell phone devices, whether it be Facebook or Instagram. So again, we encourage you to find the Straight Talk page. We will include links to those pages again, maybe not today, but certainly as time progresses.
We'll continue to advertise
over the coming days. And again, the first goal is to reach 100 followers on both Facebook and Instagram, so that then we can be able to present a live streaming feed from those platforms. But for the moment, it's just YouTube currently available, and we are broadcasting, streaming live video and audio right now.
Yeah, because Facebook needs a certain amount of followers, like you said, and then in addition to that, they also want, I think it's 24 hours or whatever.
Yes.
They need a 24-hour period before you can start broadcasting live.
Quite right. So there are one or two technical challenges, and again, we're grateful to Kenny Rankin, Monster Media, also NetClues for providing administrative.
You read my mind, Austin.
I did. Well, lightning in a bottle, buddy.
You're always doing that.
Lightning in a bottle. We share
Let
the
me
same
finish
brain.
my own thoughts, Austin.
We share the same brain sometimes. Lessens the load. What can I
don't
say?
know. That's very scary.
It's a frightening thought when you think about it. Really it is. To know us is.
I'm wondering why I'm having all these smutty thoughts.
Now, conservative radio, Mr. Solomon. Conservative radio.
Yeah.
That's what we're aiming for. 745-2626. Phone lines are open. Also, before we delve into some of our discussions, a bit sober, if not sad news. Very recently, over the course of the last few days, as a matter of fact, we lost a son of the soil in the person of Dave Rocket. But I do see someone on the phone line, so let's see if we can take the first call right now. Let's see if I can make this work. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello?
Maybe it's not coming through.
Maybe not.
Technical issues.
Technical issue. Let's see if we can try the next one. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Having those technical issues reminds me of when we used to answer the call sometime and you'd get the cable and wireless, or
yeah,
and we go, not talking to you today.
Yeah. Oh, try again.
Trying to get the call.
Hello, can you hear us? All right. Well, these are the technical issues we were talking about. We should be broadcasting, but we're not. Okay, we're going to slowly get there.
We're going to get there.
Try this one. Hello, caller, you're on the air? Yeah, technical issues. This is why you have a soft opening. And this is very much a soft opening. We'll have a big grand opening when we've worked out all the bugs.
Worked it all out.
So I apologize to those persons who are now calling in and can't seem to get through.
Well, we sure appreciate the calls.
We do appreciate you taking the time to call, and I really can't explain why these lines are not connecting.
So in the interim, I don't know how many time we have before we have to go to a break, but I can start asking
We have another 12
questions.
minutes before our first break, so we have time.
So let me ask the question then, Austin, while you're stretching and trying to see if you can answer a call.
Yeah, caller, can you hear us? Just. No,
nothing.
No feedback. All right, we do apologize. We'll get this worked out.
At some point in time.
Yes, at some point.
So let's chat a little bit in the interim, Austin. I think persons, like you were saying, might want to know, well, where have these guys been for the last couple of years? So I'll start with you.
Yes.
Where have you been, Austin?
Where have I been? Well,
well, first of all, I think it was, at least from my perspective, I don't think I've seen you since the election last.
No, I don't think we have. We have definitely communicated.
Yeah, one or two times in text, etc.
But we haven't had the chance to really get together. And this is probably the longest we've been together in a single setting, other than, of course, the last few weeks of setting up.
We only touched base for a little while over those period of time. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing.
Yes.
Still trying?
I'm still trying. I'm trying to multitask at the same time. I'm trying to speak to our tech folks as to why the phone lines are not connecting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you first? We talk about you first. You tell, because you've been gone the longest. I mean, really, you got elected in 2009, didn't you?
Okay, Austin. Okay, I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. He's so shy. I always tell you this.
You're forcing it out of me, Austin.
Tell us where you've been for the last.
Well, I don't know. I can't.
Years.
Okay, all I can tell the public is that I have been, I've been enjoying life. To be quite honest with you, I got a piece of land up in East End, doing a little bit of farming. I know many persons would probably have not seen me as the farmer guy, but I intend to have some goats, some chickens, and some cows, but for now I got the goats. I thought I was starting on the easy end of the stick, but apparently somebody has informed me that I did not. I should have started with chickens. And Kenny was telling me I can sell one egg for 75 cents, so I don't know. I might go with the chickens.
Okay.
But anyway, I've been doing a bit of farming. I've also been doing some construction work, primarily for myself, just doing a lot of work around the yard, and for one or two family members and some friends. But I love construction, by the way.
You do?
Anything creative.
All right.
Including talking to you on the radio.
Indeed. I'm trying to find an alternative to the telephone lines. We do have WhatsApp calling.
You want to try that?
So I'm going to try to get us connected on WhatsApp, and then once I do, I'll give you my WhatsApp number, and persons who would otherwise be calling 745-2626.
We always give it our number as how it starts.
That's how it begins, and the phone's never silenced, but that's all right. It's what we want. So I'm connected. 928-2562 is my personal cell phone number, and we'll use that in the place of a 1-800 line. So if you've got WhatsApp on your cell phone, which I'm sure you do, and you're near Wi-Fi, so you don't have to use up your personal data, by all means, give us a call on the WhatsApp line. Again, this will give us the opportunity to test that option at the same time as well. So we are, again, working out the kinks. The WhatsApp number, 928-2562, 928-2562. You can try giving us a call on that.
928-2562.
We can see if we can make that work as well. I know we're broadcasting all the way to Miami. We got some folks calling us on from Miami. Okay, got a call coming through there. Now, I can see it on my end. Where is it on the... Where is it on the... Why am I not seeing it? Seeing it on my phone here. Let's see. Can we answer it? Let's see.
Working through the bugs.
Hello, can you hear us?
I hear something.
Yes, I hear her on my phone, but I don't hear her coming through a computer device, which is where it's supposed to come from.
We need to get a dean or someone in here.
We do need to get someone in here. You know, we're grateful to the folks who set us up for us, but let's see. Allow notifications. Okay, I got it. Allow. Let's see. And then accept. Let's try this again. Hello, can you hear us? Let's see if we're getting you through the board. No. It's not working that way. All right, we apologize. The phone lines are just not cooperating. They should be working straight from the WhatsApp page. We have the WhatsApp connected to the desktop.
But it is a positive sign that you are getting calls.
It is a positive
People are
sign that
listening.
People are listening, and that is encouraging.
Sorry you can't get through.
I'm sorry you can't get through at the present moment, and I'm still scratching my head a little bit as to why that is, but we will get there. We will get there. So as we were saying before, you were.
Yeah, so I'm like quasi a bit of a farmer, and I'm also doing construction and just enjoying life. I can't complain. I should stir things up, It's 4:52. People are stuck in traffic right now, Austin.
They are.
And I should say specifically if you're heading east.
Yes.
You can blame the fact that you're in the traffic partly for all of those extremist environmentalists who are saying, don't build a new road. You might ruin the road. What's it? Lime lizards.
Yeah.
Lime lizards.
Well,
I just thought I'd stir it up.
In all development, we know we're going to lose something. And I believe that we have an obligation, certainly in this case, developing a new road, to mitigate any potential losses as best as possible. And by all means, we can have this conversation about the east-west extension into the eastern districts. But certainly anyone who lives east of Prospect,
it's terrible.
It's a no-brainer. They want a road. They need a road. They certainly don't need the most expensive option. They're willing to take the cheapest option, but they need an option because whether it be drive times going home in the evenings or that morning commute to work, it is just literally a nightmare.
Well, let me just share a little bit of my experience. First of all, when I first got the goats that I have, I had to try to start working out times. I'd be getting up all hours in the morning early, trying to chop bush before I got my day started, if there's such a thing. And I'll never forget one of the first times I said, well, surely if I chop this bush, feed the goats, and I'm on the road by 5 o'clock, heading from East End, I should have a pretty smooth ride in.
Right. 5
o'clock, Austin. I think it was 5:30-ish. I'm getting near just about Oz's gas station.
Uh-huh.
Here's a free plug.
Yes, there you go. You're welcome.
Anyway.
That's okay, man. You give directions, by the way. Despite the fact that we have street names now, it's still all about, oh, hang on. I got a WhatsApp call here.
I heard something pretty loud
Check your phone. Check my phone to answer, but can I do it this way?
Yeah, maybe they can text.
I'm supposed to be able to connect it that way, but it's still...
So anyway, I get by Oz's gas station, and already I'm in traffic. And I said, no, man, this is unbelievable. And for a person who lives in Georgetown, it was my first experience. I mean, what people are facing that's living out in the eastern districts is terrible. Something has to be done.
Indeed.
It's a no-brainer.
Again, that's the phone line. Hang on, let's see. Ensure your program button is insane. Yes, program. We're in program 1 and program 4. And certainly we're in the first extension as we should be, live on air.
You got to use.
I'm just talking to my tech crew who are again using technology to assist us with these phone lines, but we're going to get there. Just by way of options, and again, we're trying new things to see what works. So we're not getting a call through on the WhatsApp line. Maybe just try sending us a voice note on WhatsApp and seeing if that can work as well. Again, we apologize for what seems to be the testing phase live on air, but it is what we have right now until we can get some of these bugs worked out. But we promise you it won't be like this forever. Matter of fact, I'm certain that within a maximum of 48 hours, we'll have these things sorted out and be able to connect with everyone, whether it be through the phone lines or not. I did get a WhatsApp message, and I just want to share it with you there. Here we go. It says, congratulations, ELlio and Austin. What an exciting and perfectly timed reunion. The Cayman Islands is lucky to have the dynamic duo back on the air, bringing insightful discussions and engaging conversations to the forefront. Your voices have always been well respected, and we look forward to hearing you both enlighten and inspire in a meaningful way. Wishing you both the very best in this new chapter. I'll be listening. So thank you for that. Let's see here. He's going to dial in from the PC. Okay, we have our tech gurus now remote accessing our computer. So they're going to take a look at what we have, and they're going to try to get us off the ground. So right now I'm no longer in control of the computer. Someone else is. But again, if the phone lines aren't working, I see a voice note there. As soon as I have access to my WhatsApp again, I will.
They're giving you that remote access thing?
Yes, I see you there. I'm going to link the device now, Mr. Kelly. There we go. Yeah. So again, 745-2626. So the phone lines, maybe don't call that number just yet, but we do have one voice note come through, and in a moment we're going to give that a test once I have control of the computer again. But yes, this is our very first episode of Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio. We will be broadcasting every weekday evening from 4:30 to 6:30, brought to you live by 89.
No, Austin, you know you already got plans that when you take off, you're going to go to 3 hours now. Yeah.
Well,
that's the same thing happened on that rooster.
Yes, right. Well, you know, that success will come down to the listening audience. Yeah. You know, those persons who choose to make it, you know, part of their day to tune us in, then by all means, we will certainly grow from 2 hours to 3 hours. We'll go from 5 days a week, potentially to 6 days a week. We hope to expand our online offerings a bit more. Again, we're grateful for the partnership with Monster Media at this point and NetClues for their participation. And we are only going to get better. We will be bringing insightful conversations to you, but we're making it more user-friendly and definitely interactive.
Yeah, once we get the kinks worked out. But I think it's going to be good. I think we're, amongst other things, it'll be good for all those persons sitting in traffic. Hopefully this helps to make the traffic a little bit better.
Stick a pin. We've got 10 seconds before the next break. Well, we're going to pause, take a very short commercial break, check in with the BBC News. But don't change that dial. There'll be more Straight Talk to come, brought to you by Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today?
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo FM, powered by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care, located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Introducing the Doctors Hospital Specialty Clinic, conveniently located in the Strand. To book your appointment at Doctors Hospital, call 325-9000. Across Cayman on 89.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
This is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. Hello. Hamas says it's delaying until further notice the release of the next batch of Israeli hostages because it says Israel is violating the terms of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas claims Israel is obstructing the flow of aid into Gaza and delaying the return of Palestinians to the north. The Israeli Defence Minister called the move a complete violation of the deal. Wira Davis has the latest from Jerusalem.
There have been tangible benefits during this first stage of the ceasefire process, but halfway through, it's a process that is under severe strain. It's very fragile. This may be Hamas's way of responding to those, what they would see, outrageous comments by Donald Trump about the future of Gaza. But Israel has threatened tonight to, in all effect, resume the war against Hamas in Gaza.
17 more Israeli hostages were due to be released. 2 planes are heading to Venezuela, carrying migrants deported by the Trump administration. These are the first Venezuelan nationals repatriated since Mr. Trump's return to the White House. The flights are run by a Venezuelan airline. The 2 countries haven't had diplomatic relations for years, and Caracas refused to cooperate with Washington's deportation plans. The trial has opened in New York State of a man charged with the attempted murder of Salman Rushdie 2.5 years ago. The author bled profusely and was left blind in one eye. 27-year-old Hadi Matar has pleaded not guilty. Neda Tawfiq reports.
Prosecutor Jason Schmidt said Matar launched himself over a set of stairs and rapidly accelerated to the stage. Then, without hesitation, he said he very deliberately and forcefully plunged a knife into Sir Salman over and over and over again, wounding him in the head, face, throat, abdomen, and thighs. Defense lawyer Lynn Schaefer told jurors that prosecutors wanted them to believe the case was straightforward, but it wasn't. If convicted, Hadi Matar could face a maximum of 25 years in prison.
Only a handful of countries have hit a UN deadline to submit plans on cutting greenhouse gas emissions. That's to help keep global temperature rises below 1.5 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. Here's Danny Aberhard.
In order to limit dangerous global warming, the UN's Paris Climate Accord relies on nations drawing up and then acting on plans to cut emissions. Scientists warn too that even some of their plans aren't compatible with keeping temperature rises to 1.5 degrees. That's seen as critical to help limit ever more extreme impacts on humans and the natural world. Scientists calculate it as an average over a 20-year period. But 2024 was the first single year when temperatures exceeded that figure.
World News from the BBC. President Macron says France is back in the race to become a centre for artificial intelligence. At a global AI summit in Paris, he's touted his country and the EU as a destination for investment, promising simplified regulations. He praised AI as a tool for progress, though adding it should be used in the service of humanity. Meanwhile, the Google boss, Sundar Pichai, said AI would usher in what he called a golden age of innovation, saying the biggest risk was of missing out. Critics warn of the impact on jobs and the environment. The UN has suspended its operations in Yemen's northern Sada region, a stronghold of the Houthi movement, due to concerns over staff safety. Most of the detentions of UN personnel last month happened in Sada. The announcement was made by UN spokesman Farhan Haq at a press briefing.
This pause is to give time to the de facto authorities and the United Nations to arrange the release of arbitrarily detained UN personnel and ensure that the necessary conditions are in place to deliver critical humanitarian support. The United Nations remains fully committed to assist the millions of people in need across Yemen.
The mayor of Albania's capital has been arrested on suspicion of corruption and money laundering. Erion Veliaj, a leading figure in Albania's governing Socialist Party, has been mayor of Tirana for the past decade and is considered to be close to the Prime Minister, Edi Rama. His wife, who runs a cultural association, has been placed under house arrest on suspicion of similar offences. South Africa is mourning the death of its first black nuclear scientist, Senamile Masango, who's died at the age of 37. The cause of death is unknown. The deputy president said she had been a beacon of hope for many young people, especially women. Masango was the first African woman to conduct experiments at the European Organisation for Nuclear Research. And that's the latest BBC News.
The views and opinions opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio on Bobo FM.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 89.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm ELlio Solomon, and welcome to Straight Talk.
And having one or two technical challenges in communicating and connecting with the members of the listening audience, but we are slowly working our way through it. The good news is during this particular break, we will be coming to you commercial-free all the way until 6 o'clock. So no commercials, no breaks. We're going to have to keep this show rolling. In the absence, at the moment, of direct callers, either on the phone lines, the WhatsApp number seems to be having some issues. But we do have one voice note that was sent, so let's see if
everything is having a little issue today.
Let's see if we can make this work. Let's press the button and cross our fingers.
I want to congratulate you, Austin and ELlio. What an amazing and just exciting time for you both. The reunion is certainly timed wonderfully. The Cayman Islands is lucky to have this dynamic duo back on the air. Sweet. And bringing us insightful discussions. I'm excited to listen in and wishing you all the best. God bless.
God bless you also, and thank you so very much for
Absolutely.
that. So we've now discovered the voice note process works just fine. It's not as interactive. Obviously, the voice note is you record anything you want to say, and we will play it on the air and then comment afterwards. But we are working to get over our communication difficulties, either within the next hour or worst case scenario, tomorrow. Just a quick note in terms of if you want to get us via streaming video, I'll tell you how to do that now, I believe. I think you go to, it's an alternative site. We're piggybacking on someone else's Instagram in order to get around the 100 followers requirement. If you search for the Rec Room, REC Room, Rec Room 345, then just click the link that is located on that page, and that will connect you automatically to our streaming video and audio, and you'll be able to chat with us directly from there. Thankfully, we want to thank NetClues and getting messages from them. They're trying to manage our social media traffic at present, getting a lot of feedback, a lot of likes and some forwards. So they certainly are taking your advice, ELlio, and spreading the word for those who are tuned in.
And let me just stress as well, NetClues, we just got them, we just dragged them in the studio today. So I mean, it's not like they had lots of notice to work on it, and we really appreciate what they're doing for us.
Yeah,
much appreciated.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
But that was a nice voice note. Greatly appreciate that. If anybody else wants to send a voice note, at least that's working, so feel free to do that.
Yes.
What's the number again to send a voice note?
928-2562. To send us a voice note via WhatsApp, and we will play it over the air. Again, it removes from us the interactive opportunity to engage back and forth with you, but by all means, share your, if there's questions, comment, your excitement to have Austin and ELlio back together again. The duo rides again.
There you go.
Butch and Sundance.
Yeah, it's like it's trouble.
It is. It is. Quite right.
We start off slow, you know.
We do.
We sneak up on them.
Before we were going to the phone lines, we were obviously sending out heartfelt condolences to the family of the late Dave Rocket. Here's an individual that, you know, again, I grew up hearing about, as you can say. He held some of the greatest parties.
I went to some of those sessions.
Georgetown. This is going back before the days when, you know, nightclubs were open past 1 o'clock on a Friday, They shut down at 12 o'clock on a Saturday.
You see, let me just interrupt you now. You know, and sometimes I have to remind myself that there's so many generations of they're coming up, and they have no idea about all that, right?
Yeah.
So back in the day, you got to understand.
There was a rotary phone, first of all.
Yeah, there was a rotary phone. We'll get to that. But it's very important. Let me take you back. This is probably completely alien to some people. But you remember you had to go to the nightclub, and you probably didn't get to the nightclub until about 9 o'clock.
Yes.
And for some strange reason, there was always some idiot in the corner flicking the light around 11:45, telling you it was time to go home, right? Flashing the light.
Yes.
And no wonder there was so much drinking, right? Because the guy had to consume a certain amount of alcohol between 9 and 11:45, call it 12 o'clock, which probably didn't end well, right? For many people, unfortunately. So you really only had about 3 hours in the club. It would have been a big deal back then. You couldn't possibly go over 12. Like, you were going to commit some major evil if you went beyond 12 o'clock.
Yes.
And so everybody...
And the roadblocks were every weekend.
Yeah. So, and then everybody used to huddle around and be asking, so where's the party at, right?
Yes.
Because they're looking for some party that's happening after the club.
Yeah, they're not ready to go home yet.
No, you're not ready to go home.
You can't. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here was always the nightclub theme.
This was the days of, the roof. The roof is on fire.
Quite right. Quite right.
And I can't finish the rest of the song on the air.
No, we can't, because we are conservative radio after all.
So Mr. Rocket, which used to have, his premises was behind the Buttonwood Club.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know where the Buttonwood Club is, that's that cream-colored building. Where do I put the locale now?
It's adjacent to what is the back end of Cricket Square these days.
Yeah, sort of. Where the KPMG building is there by Cricket Square, if you're...
Again, another shameful plug. It's called Sola de Luna or something like Sun and the Moon.
Sol de Luna, yeah.
That's
Sol de Luna.
Sol de Luna,
like
exactly. Right. It's an upstairs building. So that's the
cream colored building there used to be the Buttonwood Club, and behind that you kind of park and walk down the trail. Lots of all the sessions, the music going on, and it was dark and cozy.
Well, again, you talk about the nightclubs. I mean, whilst the clubs were closing at 1 o'clock on a Friday, 12 o'clock on a Saturday, short window to drink, as you pointed out, because people didn't go out before 9 o'clock. It was also a slower time. We had single carriageway roads then.
Yeah.
One northbound and one southbound, not these multiple lane roads that we enjoy today. Yes, people still drove fast, but I think 50 was the maximum.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you were some of these politicians with, Corvettes and whatnot.
Yeah.
They were the original bad boys of the road.
But the things were just crazy, right? Because as you're sitting and thinking about that, just think about even Bobby Thompson Way.
Yes.
That little area from the light, right where the pickleball is, all the way up to the roundabout there. That used to be like the quarter-mile track too, right?
Yes.
That was, you didn't drive on that road normally. You just we went there racing.
Yes, indeed.
So it was some interesting times, particularly for those persons who are too young to remember all that. We definitely want to take our hats off and condolences to friends and family of Mr. Rocket.
Yes, absolutely.
All of us have a story to tell, and definitely his story is an interesting one.
It certainly is. Dave Rocket is a son of the soil, the original Cayman, we like to call it. And as ELlio just pointed out, it just brings back a flood of memories when we were a lot smaller, or as Alan Jackson likes to say, when we were little bitty. We do have a listener that shared a voice note with us. Again, we're working off of just voice notes at the moment because the phone lines are giving us some challenges. You can use WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is 928-2562. And just send us a quick voice note on that WhatsApp. We're going to take another one right now.
Hi, I was at the West Bay Convention, and I was there listening to the conversation, to the discussion, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot about it because I work in the tourism industry, and I really do hope they build a pier, because it really does make a big difference if they did do the pier, because it make more jobs and give us in the tourism industry more hours and more potential to earn more, and also to help Cayman a lot.
All right. Well, again, thank you to that listener.
We missed the first part of that, but obviously he's talking about attending the West Bay meeting on cruise tourism.
Yes.
And the piers.
Yes, he is.
Which, by the way, you were there too.
I was. It was a very good meeting, and I thank you for inviting us. But obviously the caller touching on one of the referendum questions that hopefully we will have an opportunity to at least address by outlining what those questions are. In the course of the coming days and weeks, we will be inviting, we've already extended invitations to both the Honorable Deputy Premier, Kenneth Bryan, who on Thursday piloted the referendum Cruise Berthing Infrastructure Gambling and Cannabis Bill 2024 through the Parliament. It was presented and passed on Thursday. So we'll go through what those questions will be. And again, our goal will be to engage in public education on the three questions being asked, namely cruise berthing, lottery, and the decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana, ganja,
and of
cannabis.
course, I won't deny myself an opinion on that, Austin, of course. But I do want to thank the so branded minority government and the opposition, the formal opposition, the progressives, for going ahead and supporting the bill. I think it's very important to be able to give the people of this country a voice.
Absolutely.
Give them an opportunity to be able to say, yes, do I want this to go forward, or I do not. I see from the polls that came in the Compass a couple of days ago, it looks like it's slated to be a yes, yes, yes.
Well,
that's interesting.
That would be encouraging. No, I'm glad you raised that, and certainly I too echo your sentiments that we congratulate the Progressive / PPM for supporting the government in passing the referendum bill. We know that the Progressives stated unequivocally that they wouldn't be supporting any contentious legislation, which I thought was, I mean, I was a little confused by that because theoretically, you know, every parliament meeting, every debate is
controversial.
Controversial.
Yeah.
It is your job to bring about controversy. Whenever you're seeking to change or amend any piece of legislation, there's going to be an extent of controversy depending on, you know, what your, you know, what side of the field you sit on and what your personal opinions are. Anything could be contentious. But the job of elected representatives is to present these challenging pieces of legislation and or amendments with the view of finding a solution to them, whether it be to improve on existing legislation or put in place legislation where none exists.
Yeah. I mean,
so I was encouraged to see that the referendum bill did pass, because really at the end of the day, it is only asking or seeking to ask the registered voters in this country three questions, which the government, and I think we all agree, are questions of national import and questions that we are saying to the voter, give us guidance. You know, voters are normally criticizing elected representatives for taking decisions, for heaven forbid, for doing the job they were elected to do, that is provide leadership without consultation. This time around, they want to get the consultation first. Give us some guidance so that we can decide, you know, what our strategic course will be over the next 4 years. That's all that's being asked.
Well, just to speak on the whole issue about controversy, you know, when I was an elected member, I had a chance to go to the United Kingdom and walk through sort of one of these orientation days, if you like, as they talk about the parliament. And one of the things I learned was, so there were two lines basically that was dividing the opposition from the government.
Yes.
And you hear that saying about toe the line. And apparently one of the reasons why they actually had that line is because members of parliament used to actually go there with swords. I mean, talk about controversy, right?
Yeah. That's real controversy.
This is real controversy.
Debating on a knife's edge.
And the lines were actually divided in such a way that the distance between those lines was that when a member of parliament drew his sword and extended it to try to get the other guy, assuming you did not cross that line, you were unable to cause injury to the other person. So that's total line.
Right.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, and to your point, you know, how can we talk about controversial? I mean, that's what it's all about. Yeah. And it's about getting in there and having all these rigorous discussions, debating it on behalf of the people that you are representing, and come and making a decision.
Yeah.
And I'm happy at the end of the day, and I know it had to be very difficult for the opposition, because one could sit and say that, and for the government, potentially many persons felt, hey, you know, I'm definitely perhaps moving myself out of the safety of my seat by trying to address this national issue at this point in time. And so kudos to the minority government, kudos to the formal opposition for actually coming out of that comfort zone and saying, rather than worrying about just simply getting reelected, I want to actually get up and do the right thing. Kudos to them. I can't say it enough. And I think that the people should make note of that.
Yes, indeed. We do have another message that came through via WhatsApp. It says, Austin and ELlio, congratulations on being back on the air. Years ago, you each took similar but different paths. Now your journeys have brought you back together at a time when open, honest conversation is more important than ever. Caymanians deserve a space where truth is discussed freely, without agenda or constraint. Your return couldn't be more timely, and we look forward to the thoughtful discussions ahead, wishing you both great success. Thank you so very much,
Absolutely.
listener,
Thank you.
for that very thoughtful, or those very thoughtful comments. And yes, I mean, our goal is to return objectivity to radio again. Our goal is to return meaningful discussions on the topics of national importance, be it those presently before Parliament or those issues that should be before Parliament. Again, trying to, in some small measure, affect positive change, but also, more importantly, helping our listening audience understand the finer moving parts of a number of these sensitive, controversial, but likewise nationally important issues. So to educate, enlighten, and to elevate is our goal. It has been our goal for the better part of 20 years, and God spare life, however long he allows us to, have these microphones. It is what we're going to strive to bring again.
And as part of that educate, enlighten, and elevate process, I mean, let me just say that, first of all, on this whole issue of referendum, I mean, from the government perspective, and of course, Austin, I know I'm kind of singing to the choir and preaching to the converted here in front of you, but if
I'll
I
just
may
say hallelujah from the choir for you right
there
now.
You go, I appreciate that. But, it's a case that you talk about this referendum, and many persons need to understand that you have what we call the parliamentary supremacy, which technically means any government that has that majority could just kind of go ahead and do whatever they want to do within that 4-year period.
Yes.
But clearly, the minority government felt that this issue has been so controversial out there in the public. There was so much back and forth. There were persons who brought a referendum. Then the same persons ended up fighting against the referendum. And let me just highlight that for a second as well. So you had the CPR that when the progressives, which you know very well, when the progressive actually came forward with what I think was a very good plan insofar as building the two piers, you had the CPR that came forward and say, hey, we don't want this, we want this to go to referendum. That's basically what the petition was saying. I'll get the exact wording for you. But they were basically saying, we want to make sure that this goes to a referendum. So actually, they were calling for the people to have a voice. And they did that by way of the people-initiated referendum. The government of the day, the progressives, said, fine, we'll give the people a voice. And when they went forward, the date was set. We ended up only getting a holiday out of it because the same group, the same CPR that brought it, ends up fighting against it. And unfortunately, that's the same thing we're actually seeing right now. They're fighting against the referendum again, which is, to me, crazy, needs to be addressed, and I'm sure I'm going to continue to address it. But they're also fighting against that referendum now. But luckily, the bill has been passed and is going forward. But from this referendum perspective, it is an opportunity for people to be able to give themselves a voice, have that voice and say. And in particular, when it comes to cruise tourism, again, they're trying to obfuscate, confuse the issue. I try to obfuscate inside
I like that. I like it. Very good. Very good. Big word.
So,
I like it.
Remind me of the Parliament days. We used to listen. It's like they went through the dictionary. Anyway, they're trying to confuse this issue because, listen, I keep giving the bus analogy, all right? The bus analogy is that you've got the pastor in the church, and he's saying, guys, listen to me. The congregation has grown. We started at 50. We're now at 150. And it's a very simple question before the council. And the question is, do we want a bus? Do you think we're at the point that we need a bus for this church? No one's asking you to figure out if it should be silver, how many wheels it should have, should it run on diesel, should it run on gasoline? That's not where we're at.
Or God blame me, peanut brown.
God blame. Inside joke. So listen, no, we're not at that point. We're just at the simple point of saying, tell me, inform us. Do you want to go forward with cruise tourism? Because if you do, we're going to need to build piers. And I'm pretty sure that if there's a yes vote, and I'm saying that there's going to be a yes vote, I'm sure of it, Austin. We need a bell in here.
We do need a bell in here.
Yeah, we have to get a bell.
Yes, yes.
There is going to be a yes vote. And why this is important, because when you get that yes vote, you're going to have the government coming forward just like the progressives did way back in 2019, and they're going to bring a plan. You're going to bring forward a plan. And I know there's persons, and again, the same opposition would be crying, yeah, but the government's corrupt. They're going to do something. You know, listen, at some point in time, let's please stop the nonsense.
Yeah.
You know, to make it sound like you're going to have people that are elected, who live here, who have their family here, generational Caymanians, and the list goes on, who's going to do something that's going to destroy the environment and destroy the lives of all Caymanians, to me, quite frankly, is nonsense.
Yeah,
okay?
it's a nonsensical argument from the get-go. It's something that is thrown around far too often. But yeah, you're absolutely right. These are persons that you elect to represent you, and they are just as much Caymanian as you are.
Absolutely.
With as much to lose as you do.
Yeah.
So the notion that our leaders will somehow, on purpose, throw a proverbial monkey wrench into the works and mash up the engine is just illogical.
Not
really.
going to happen.
It's just illogical. We might not agree with their approach. We might think perhaps the proposed solutions are a little out there and questionable. But that's what democracy is. We question them based on what is said and what is done. But this notion that they're corrupt it's a strong word to use.
Absolutely.
It's just a very strong word.
And unfortunately, I see the CPR throwing that word out a lot. But the thing of it is that we want to go through this process. We want to give it a chance to actually happen. And in part of this educational process, I think it's important to talk about the people-initiated referendum versus a government-initiated referendum. And by the way, there should be a lot of discussion about this, because if you think about it, Austin, there's a potential for people-initiated referendums to be very easily abused.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about persons with large amounts of money and how easy it would be to go on a campaign simply to get this people-initiated referendum, but discussion for another day.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to highlight to the persons is, generally speaking, according to the Constitution, there is two different types of referendum.
Yeah.
There's a government-initiated referendum, and there's the people-initiated referendum.
Mm-hmm.
The people's initiated referendum, when they bring it forward, whatever they're asking for, in this particular case, when CPR brought it in 2019, they were asking for a referendum to be held.
Yes.
When they reach that number, then at the end of the day, the decision that's to be made based on what they bring forward becomes binding.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, whatever they put down in that petition, in this particular case, they called on the government to have a referendum. That's really what they were calling for, is give the people a voice. We want them to have a referendum on this issue of cruise spares.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, quite contradictory, they ended up fighting against it. But if that had went to a referendum, if the people had voted yes for that, it would mean that the government of the day, and any government arguably, would be bound to go forward and have a referendum.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
When the government does something, they're not legally binding, but I want to stress it's not legally binding, but it is politically binding, because you can't possibly have the voters out there in majority, in mass, voting for something, telling their politicians what they want, and then the politicians just willy-nilly, to use our friend Alan's word, not just willy-nilly coming out and saying we're going to disregard that. To do that would make it that at the end of the day, it's like political suicide. So where it is not legally binding, it is politically binding. And I stress that to say this. Let's understand that when we go to the polls on 3rd of April 2025 and vote in favor of cruise tourism, vote in favor of the piers being constructed, government now and in the future will be politically bound to go forward with that decision. And we absolutely need it. There's at least 3,000 Caymanians and their families that are depending on cruise tourism, and we want it to go forward. We want it to happen. It needs to happen.
No, absolutely. Well, I thank you for that rather broad summary, and you're correct in every respect. But if we were to break it down into even smaller bite-sized pieces, we'll say start from the beginning. What is a referendum? A referendum simply is a vote on a single issue. There, as ELlio pointed out, there are two general types of referendums, either binding or non-binding. A binding ballot means that the initiative, once passed, will be implemented. Once you voted on it, there's a yes on it, this will be the course that the next government, next administration must or otherwise will take. a non-binding ballot or referendum, then the outcome of that referendum may just be taken as a means of popular advice. Again, guidance or the other, but not a requirement that the next steps be taken towards implementation. Now, when we look at the referendum that will be taking place alongside the national vote on April 30th, if I can just read directly from the bill, now law, that was passed in the Parliament on Thursday last week, the 6th of February. I'm looking at what is then the Green Paper, the Referendum for Cruise Berthing, Infrastructure, Gambling and Cannabis Bill 2024. It is now the Referendum Law 2024. I say that once the governor has given her assent to it, but the legislators, the elected arm, has definitely passed it by the vote of yeas versus nays. But the questions that will be put to the registered voters of this country, and I will read, we are looking at section 4, subsection 2, for the purpose of determining the matters of national importance specified in subsection 1, the following questions shall be asked at the referendum. Just pause there momentarily. Obviously, there are two choices of nomenclatures, words shall and may. May obviously gives the sitting parliamentarian the option to change perhaps these questions, versus shall. These are the explicit wording for the questions that will appear on the ballot. So the law itself says the following questions shall be asked. The first question is, should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure? The second question will be, do you support the introduction of a national lottery in the islands? And the third and final question is, do you support the decriminalization of the consumption and possession of small amounts of cannabis? So from the response to those ballots, that will be what the next administration will use as its guidance in order to implement or not whatever the voters express they want in each of those three specific areas of national importance.
Yeah. And again, I just want to stress that, yes, even though this particular referendum is a government-initiated referendum and is not legally binding, in other words, you can't necessarily go and enforce it via the courts in the event that a government decides not to go in that particular direction. Politically, it is. If you even look at the situation right now, you just mentioned earlier on some of the things that the progressive said prior to. And if you have politicians, and not just the progressives, I mean, you obviously have other members of the opposition there as well. You have the, what's the new group? CCP?
Yes.
So
TCCP.
Oh, TCCP.
Not the...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another inside joke.
Okay, another inside joke. So you have several different facets within the parliament. And if you have members, and then you have other groups that are running as well, and I think you've heard some statements from them in the press as well. If you have persons that are not necessarily willing to move forward with this particular discussion, debate, or even less the voting in parliament because they deem it to be controversial, well, then can you imagine what would happen if you get a yes or a no and then you decide, you definitely, if you got a no, absolutely they wouldn't do it. I mean, we didn't even have a referendum yet, and you had persons that didn't want to do it because there was bickering back and forth and was deemed to be a controversial issue.
Yeah.
So a no vote would absolutely kill it, I can 100% assure you, which is why we can't make that happen.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, the Cayman Islands depends on this. It's putting at least $300 million directly into the economy, which translates at least a minimum multiplier effect to be at least $1.5 billion is circulating, providing jobs and opportunities for everyone.
You're talking specifically on the cruise berthing question.
Specifically on the cruise issue, right? And again, like I said, approximately 3,000 families that are benefiting directly from this, need this for their livelihood. And people, a lot of times it's very easy for us to look and say, well, this issue doesn't impact me. I'm not into cruise tourism. But what we don't understand is the very place that you're going. Let's just give a very simple example. The simple place that you're going right now to change your car tire. There is at least how many taxi drivers, how many tour bus drivers are funding that particular tire shop
Keeping it open, but
which helps to keep it open for you to go and change your tire that you do once every couple of months. So all of us are impacted. And it's only when you lose that you're unfortunately going to realize how much it impacted your life.
Yeah. Well, I want to pick up there because I think certainly on the cruise question, there are two very obvious sides that I don't believe those who are opposed to the idea of cruise berthing are giving proper care and attention to. Number one, the economic value to the country. And that is what, the per passenger head tax and what those numbers mean and the receiving of that revenue to the country. We all talk about we want new roads. We all talk about we want new and better schools. Right. We all talk about we need better services and equipment, at our hospitals outside of, the services provided by private sector. Yeah. Where do you think that money is going to come from other than these revenue sources that the country earns? So that's the first instance. I mean, and, there is a huge difference, a wide delta, as they say, from 500,000 customers to 1.9 million customers. And if you are earning a fee per person, obviously, I'm sure you can appreciate, it represents a significant value to the government, which is vis-a-vis the people of the Cayman Islands. That's the first issue. The other issue that I, again, believe that those who are critical of this point do not give proper weight to is this notion we're seemingly focused on just the 3,000 or so persons who are directly involved in cruise tourism. But if we use Central Georgetown just as a simple example, we've had Cardinal Avenue closed what seems like forever as part of the Georgetown revitalization project that is continuing to be ongoing, and hopefully, there'll be an end in sight. But the absence of foot traffic, the absence of vehicular traffic, what has that meant for the businesses that operate out of Central Georgetown? They have to be suffering. Likewise, cruise tourism, when they show up, now your shop may not have been open directly to service the cruise passenger, but the cruise passenger directly or indirectly supports that business. That business employs other Caymanians. Right. That means pension, that means health, that means salary, so you can go shopping and, buy your groceries, and that money is spread throughout the wider community. So there are a number of businesses in Central Georgetown specifically, again, not directly involved in the cruise tourism sector, but they do, in fact, receive a benefit from their mere presence.
You make excellent points.
So when we break that down into economic numbers, now you can easily see how cruise benefits 3,000 to upwards of 10,000 people very quickly in the very real sense. So again, I've spent 20 years arguing both sides of the coin on this issue. And certainly after being in government for 4 years, I have a much greater appreciation for how valuable any revenue sources for the country, and cruise being one of them. And to remove that leaves the question, okay, so if the decision is to not have it, and you are saying we don't need the value of that income, what are we going to replace it with? Because one thing is for certain, the demands on the society are not going to go away. We look at the welfare state alone is a debt that is growing arguably out of control. And is only getting bigger. But that money has to come from somewhere.
You make some excellent points, Austin. I'd like to expand on some of those. I mean, for example, you talk about the fees and stuff coming in. I'll get some exact numbers for you, but understand that the cruise tourist, for example, pays fees to the government. Some of those are environmental protection fees. So when you actually talk about a lot of issues with our environment, whether it's purchasing certain pieces of land or aiding in protecting some of these species, etc., it's paid for, amongst other things, by cruise tourism, that environmental protection fee. The government also uses some of those same fees it collects from the cruise ships in order to supplement our cargo. So in other words, it's helping to pay the bill for the cargo that goes and delivers your food into the supermarkets. You talk about businesses that are being affected. We did a list a couple of days ago. There's at least 37 businesses that was in downtown Georgetown that no longer exist.
Wow.
Completely gone.
Completely gone.
Gone. Gone.
Therein lies my point.
And I know I have it on my phone right there, and I'll probably look it up and just name a few, but was 37 businesses gone because of cruise tourism. And you got to understand that cruise tourism, as I've said before, is also aiding in other things. Let's look at CTC, the Turtle Center, which I happen to be down there as well. You're talking about 109 employees at the Turtle Center, 99% of which are Caymanians. There is no way you're going to get rid of cruise tourism and those persons are going to all be there working at the Turtle Center. It's not going to happen.
No.
And many might say again, well, does that impact me? Well, I'll give you a very simple example. Well, a lot of us love our turtle meat. At least once a week we want to indulge ourselves.
Sure.
Well, there's no way, first of all, it could possibly even stay at the same price when you start losing cruise tourism. Turtle Center itself as a business makes approximately 60% of its revenues from cruise tourism.
60%. That's significant.
And so, again, to your point, whether you're talking about businesses in town or as far as you go to West Bay, they are very highly dependent on cruise. But then again, you see the synergy of it because is the Turtle Center attraction just for cruise? Or do we also go as locals and enjoy it? Do we also go as stay-over visitors and enjoy it? But if you lose cruise, when you impact the 60% of their revenues, you're not going to have the Turtle Center.
Correct.
Or let's put it this way, if you do have the Turtle Center, you'll definitely have to be doing it at a higher tone of subsidy from the core government. So there's a lot of reasons why we need to be able to get out there, as far as I'm concerned, and support cruise. But again, I mentioned earlier on that when we saw the polls coming in from the Compass, it was interesting. I don't know what they are right now, but when I saw them last, it looks like, at least insofar as that poll was concerned, that you were getting yes on all three of those items.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Now, I just want to state, I think also for the record, whilst ELlio and I might be speaking on the pros, if you will, of saying yes to the question of should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure in the Cayman Islands, there is two sides to this. And I do not want to give the impression to our listening audience, in particular those that may be representing Sustainable Cayman or the opposing side to this conversation, that your views are any less important. Not at all. This is a platform for everyone to share their views on because, as we stated at the very beginning, we don't profess to have all of the answers. Whilst we have presented the one side that is very supportive of a yes vote, there's another part of our community that might be asking themselves, well, how can the public be asked to vote on a project where the details have not been fully explained? And for example, why should it be in Georgetown? Why not an alternative? If we are considering cruise infrastructure, why are we not giving greater emphasis on the environmental risks? So these are all very real and legitimate
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Of this conversation. And I just wanted to state unequivocally, whilst as hosts, and again, I've argued this point for 20 years, both for and against, and somewhere along the lines, certainly after being elected and seeing what goes on behind that curtain, I've seen the light, so to speak. But it does not necessarily make my position any more right or wrong than anyone else's. Is the only point I want to make.
Well, I can say, first of all, I didn't intend to talk about cruise this afternoon, but I'm happy to do so. But I'm glad you raised it.
It's funny enough, we did have this conversation, and we decided we were going to take a different track, but
we can't help
again,
ourselves.
life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans, as we say.
Absolutely. But, let's just talk a little bit about the environmental stuff, because I think it's very, very important. I am, at this age, for the first time, I had the opportunity to be able to view what was actually out there. And I want persons to just really ponder it and ask yourself, from an environment, you're concerned about the environment. So you're wondering what coral is out there, for example, in downtown Georgetown. Is it pristine or is it just rock? And I want you to just think about this. The present situation is that you have cruise ships that are docked out in town, and it's a situation where they're dropping anchors, playing Russian roulette with whatever's down there, whether it's coral or whether it's rock. And I can tell you, as a matter of fact, and you can go and look it up for yourself, that the MSC in 2014 tore up 16,000 square feet of coral. When I was in high school, many persons will remember the Rhapsody that landed up there and stayed there for 2 weeks or a month or however long it was until Mother Nature decided to let it go.
Yeah.
They even made a drink off of that. Rhapsody on the rocks. It's true.
It's true.
It's
pretty tasty too, as if I remember correctly.
It is true. But I want you to just use what God gave you. Use your common sense and ask yourself the question. Dropping anchors every day, dragging and destroying up to 16,000 square feet. In order for the ships to stand still, they have to use their thrusters. Okay? They're doing all these little thruster moves to be able to keep themselves stabilized. Then in addition to that, other than them running their motors, we have tenders that are coming back and forth. And again, they're dumping their fuel and or some of it into the ocean. How is that possibly better than having a ship that's parked and arguably turned off, no motors running? And if you actually look at the piers, you're probably talking about, if there was some pristine coral down there, damaging no more than what the one cruise ship did in 2014. But we sent someone out there to take a dive. This is not, and I want to encourage you. You can check it out on our Facebook page. Okay? And I'm going to give you all the information about how you can go ahead and connect to it. But there's a video, and I encourage you to come to our town hall meetings as well, that clearly shows someone going out there and diving. We put a GPS so you can see exactly where the person is, which is where the piers were going to go. And the visibility is not great. And the only thing you see down there is a moonscape, just rocks. And I say that to say that it is not the pristine environment of coral that the groups have made you believe. That is not the situation. The other thing that the argument is the sand has the flow and the water has the flow. This is going to be built on pylons. Just like how you see those simple docks that you see in Frank Sound and different areas. Again, of course, looking a lot better, but the same concept. It allows the water and the sand to flow. We've shown images, for example, where you can actually see how the coral actually grows in it. It encourages life. It allows life to thrive. It doesn't destroy it. So I want you to get the facts on that. Let me just give you these 37 businesses, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think I have a list here. In no particular order. 1, these are 37 businesses, for those that just might be joining us or no longer passively listening. 37 businesses have already gone.
Closed their doors.
Yeah, and I want you to understand, when we say businesses, we're talking about owners' families, the employees, their families, and everybody being negatively impacted. 1, Hard Rock, gone. Blu-ray, gone. Bread and Chocolate, gone. Daily Grind, gone. Cayman Perfumes, gone. Dairy Queen, gone. Blue Stone, gone. Kirk Perfume Shop, currently empty on Cardinal Avenue, gone. Häagen-Dazs at Bayshore Mall, gone. The Medicine Man at Bayshore Mall, gone. Selections, gone. And that's both on the Dairy Queen side and also Selections on the South Terminal, gone. Red Sale, the general store, gone. Purple Bee Souvenirs, gone. I Love Cayman Souvenirs, gone. Diamonds International, below Hard Rock, gone. Jake Scott's Duty Free Liquors, gone. Jake Scott Duty Free Island Plaza, gone. Jake Scott Duty Free, which is now Sandbar, gone. Blackbeard's Rum Stop, gone. Tortuga Duty Free Boilers Road, gone. Tortuga Duty Free Fort Street, gone. Tortuga Port Building North Terminal, gone. Smoothie King, gone. Bread of Life, gone. K-Brew Bar behind the museum, gone. Blue Iguana, gone. Blue Wave Clothing, gone. Too Hot Souvenir at South Terminal, gone. Ninja Ramen Cayman Restaurant, gone. Virtue Fashion, gone. Atlantis Submarine, I think we definitely know that one, gone. Del Sol Touched by Your Sun T-shirts, gone. Havana's Flip Flop Shop, gone. Cayman Islands Ice Cream Shop, gone. Swatch Watch Shop on Cardinal Avenue, gone. And I'm pretty sure we're probably missing some.
You probably are.
And let me just stress, that's within the last 2 years.
Yes.
Our cruise tourism business, while all the other territories are growing, and have there no doubt about it, the statistics will show, I don't know why people are out there bandering about misinformation. Everywhere else is increasing, and the Cayman Islands is the only one decreasing. We have decreased by 45% since 2019.
Sure. I just want to say again, well, obviously, when talking about, what have we been doing, for the last few years before we got back to radio, obviously, my co-host represents the one side that is very pro for the cruise berthing facilities. He's the what's your title? Executive manager? Is that what it is?
You call me whatever you like.
Oh, whatever you are. He's wearing a
executive.
T-shirt that says "boss" on it, so I can call him the boss. But
and I'll stress the boss is bigger if you're behind me, right?
You're the associate executive director.
Executive program manager.
Executive program manager for the Association for Cruise Tourism. So ACT is certainly the organization in which ELlio represents. Again, full transparency.
Yeah.
But as we continue to say, because, and I will also add that both of us are aligned in our viewpoints on this particular question. I think we both will say to you completely honestly that we are hoping for and would certainly be pushing for a yes vote on the referendum question as it relates to cruise.
And I will stress that this has been my position since at least 2009, long before I was involved in ACT. Yeah.
Right. So, again, full transparency, nothing new here, but certainly where we stand today, because obviously you get a sense, at least, that it's possible that ELlio Solomon might be, in favor of cruise berthing from some of the things he said. But going back to those 37, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to
say it again.
Austin. I don't want to answer anybody's questions and I'll put too fine a point on it.
I don't want to jump to conclusions.
I don't want to jump to conclusions or anything. But maybe,
I infer,
maybe ELlio Solomon might be in support of cruise berthing. But hey, you be the judge. I could be wrong. But I just want to stipulate, whilst I do believe that these 37 businesses, what is beyond argument is they've closed. One day they were there and employing persons, whether it be 2, 3, or 10, they're gone. Their businesses are gone. Those jobs are gone. We can't say whether those persons who had those jobs have found alternate employment or not. But obviously those jobs, those salaries are also tied to mortgages. So all of that is no longer there. And we don't know where, the persons who were attached to these companies, where they've gone, but certainly, they've been under pressure. Also, I don't think we can say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they're gone because of the absence of cruise passengers. But I will say that it is a factor, a contributing factor behind their closure. We had COVID-19. There were challenges placed there. We had inflation. There were challenges faced there. We've had economic challenges over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, and that has certainly hit businesses the hardest. So perhaps those closures, may be affected by any number
but I like that.
Of reasons.
Stick a pin.
Yeah, I will stick a pin.
Okay, so if you even look at that, let's just talk about COVID.
Sure.
Why would COVID be relevant here? Clearly, it wouldn't be like, we lose Hard Rock because we had COVID, because we had to wear a mask. No, you would have lost Hard Rock because COVID shut cruise tourism down. And that in itself should be a signal. That should set off an alarm bell that tells you what will happen if you continue to get the decline in numbers. And bear in mind that the projections right now is that within the next 4 years, we're now at 1,078,000, which that's gone from the high of 1.9 million. You're now down to 1,078,000. Next couple of years is down to 700 and something thousand. And persons are already starting to exit businesses. So you have employees who are saying, hey, I kind of like working for you guys, but I need to start a transition because I see the train coming.
Right.
And so you will have businesses that, even though they might want to hold on, are going to start collapsing simply because employees are trying to look and say, I need to get some higher ground. And so even if we want to look at COVID and say, hey, what impact did that have? Whatever impact it had negatively as it relates to these specific businesses is because you didn't have cruise.
Yes.
And that is what we're talking about. When you don't have cruise, you're going to lose a lot of businesses and you're negatively impacting lives. And what COVID shows us under your government was we were subsidizing over 5,000 people. So you got to ask yourself, to your point that you made earlier, where is this money going to come from? Yeah. And I want to stress, when I first got elected in 2009, we got a letter from Chris Bryant, and he was responsible for the overseas territories at the time. I'm sure you heard of him.
Yeah.
He wrote a letter to us saying, basically, hey, your financial situation isn't good. We want you to implement a 2% property tax. Mm-hmm. It was not something that our government looked well at, because we were talking right now that the average Caymanian would now be having to find anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000 a year just to keep their property. Yeah. And first of all, I'm completely against property tax, because when you're paying property tax, you are now renting. You don't own anymore, you're renting it. If you think you own it, then stop paying and see who takes it, okay? Right. And in this case, it won't be Uncle San, it'll be her Royal Highness, or His Royal Highness. So bottom line of it is that they wanted to implement property tax. If we keep losing these revenue streams like you spoke about earlier, Austin, that is precisely what is going to happen. You're going to end up having to pay taxes because we don't have industries that are putting money in the coffers as well as putting it into the economy. Not to mention the social ramifications, potential crime increases, etc., from persons now who are unemployed.
Yes, no, absolutely.
We need to address it.
Well, we're about 2 minutes away from having to pause and take our top of the hour break, particularly go to the BBC News for you. But when we come back, of course, we'll have at least another half hour. We are going to, and I'm going to just sort of make an executive decision here, my dear friend.
Go for it.
We spent the better part of the first hour talking about, obviously, the first referendum question, should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure? I'm going to move away from that when we come back.
We can talk about.
We're going to, well,
hot.
Yes, Marijuana Monday. That's what today is.
There you go.
I believe, and I could be wrong, but we have seen an unprecedented number of voters added to the official voters registration list, over 25,000. Certainly when talking to election officials, and we have, again, extended an invitation to the Director of Elections, Mr. Wesley Howell. Hopefully we'll hear from him either this week or early next week to talk about what's happening at the Elections Office. But I believe, personally I believe, I could be wrong, that a number of young people made the race to get registered specifically to participate in the third question, should we decriminalize certain amounts of marijuana or ganja. So when we come back, that is where we want to pick up on, engage a few discussions. The phone lines, again, the 745-2626 is not quite working. But we are encouraging folks to send a voice note to 928-2562. Just give us a call, share your views, or send us a quick WhatsApp. But we have to pause and take a short commercial break. But there'll be more Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio still to come right here on Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today?
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I'd never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo FM, powered by by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Introducing the Doctors Hospital Specialty Clinic, conveniently located in the Strand. To book your appointment at Doctors Hospital, call 325-9000. Across Cayman on 89.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Robo FM.
This is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. Hello. The Israeli military says it's raising its state of readiness around Gaza after Hamas announced it was delaying the release of the next group of Israeli hostages until further notice. The army said leave for combat soldiers and operational units was on hold. Hamas accuses Israel of violating the terms of the ceasefire agreement. The BBC's Wira Davis is in Jerusalem.
These are really, really quite dangerous times, I think, because the perception was that we would finish the first phase of the ceasefire. There would then be talks about moving to a second phase in which more hostages would be released. And for Israelis and Palestinians, that is the key thing. Mr. Trump's comments have completely muddied the waters. His latest comments on a Fox News network, he was asked, would any Palestinians who leave Gaza be allowed to return? And he said, no, they wouldn't. That is a red rag to a bull for most Palestinians and their Arab allies.
2 planes are heading to Venezuela carrying migrants deported by the Trump administration. These are the first Venezuelan nationals repatriated since Mr. Trump's return to the White House. Leonardo Rocha has this report.
Reports say some members of Venezuela's most powerful criminal gang, the Tren de Aragua, are among the passengers. The 2 countries haven't had diplomatic relations for years, and Caracas refused to cooperate with Washington's deportation plans. The political differences remain, but President Nicolás Maduro made a deal with the U.S. last month to accept the return of deported migrants. Mr. Maduro, in return, released 6 American citizens who'd been in Venezuelan prisons for months.
A consortium of investors led by Elon Musk has offered to buy OpenAI for $97 billion. A consortium lawyer said it aimed to re-establish the artificial intelligence pioneer as a safety-focused force for good. Responding on X, the OpenAI boss Sam Altman said no thank you and offered to buy Mr. Musk's social media platform for 1/10 of the price. Elon Musk was a co-founder of OpenAI but left after a power struggle. The new head of the US Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has instructed staff not to show up for work. Russell Vought's move follows a weekend decision to shut the agency's Washington headquarters. The leading Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren joined protesting staff outside the agency. She accused President Trump and Elon Musk of trying to shut the agency so billionaires could cheat American consumers.
This fight is about hardworking people versus the billionaires who want to squeeze more and more and more money out of them. And now is our time to put a stop to this.
BBC World News. Only a handful of countries have hit a UN deadline to submit plans on cutting greenhouse gas emissions to help keep global temperature rises below a key threshold. That's despite warnings the world is fast running out of time to keep such rises below 1.5 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. The threshold is seen as critical to help limit ever more extreme impacts on humans and the natural world. Scientists calculate it as an average over a 20-year period, but 2024 was the first single year when temperatures exceeded that figure. The trial has opened in New York State of a man accused of stabbing the author Salman Rushdie. The attack left him blind in one eye. Neda Tawfiq reports.
Salman Rushdie is expected to testify during the trial and will come face-to-face with 26-year-old Hedi Matar, his alleged attacker, for the first time in more than 2 years. Prosecutor Jason Schmidt said Matar lunged a knife into Sir Salman over and over and over again. Defense lawyer Lynn Schaefer told jurors that prosecutors wanted them to believe the case was straightforward, but it wasn't. If convicted, Hedi Matar could face a maximum of 25 years in prison.
Police in Austria have issued a European arrest warrant for a woman suspected of posing as a spiritual healer known as a shaman to defraud people of large sums of money. The police said they discovered cash, jewellery and gold worth over $10 million at the woman's house near Vienna. South Africa is mourning the death of its first black nuclear scientist, Senamile Masango, who's died at the age of 37. The cause is unknown. The deputy president said she had been a beacon of hope for many people, especially women. Masango was the first African woman to conduct experiments at the European Organisation for Nuclear Research. BBC World News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and ELlio on Bobo FM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your favorite, your new favorite station, 89.1 Straight Talk with your host, Austin Harris, and myself, ELlio Solomon. Now, I think just before we went to the break, Austin, you were threatening to talk about something.
I was. I'm gonna pull you away from the whole question on Cruz birthing.
It's hard, but I understand.
And the fantastic case that you are making for it. And perhaps in the final 30 minutes or so that we have left of remaining on our show, focus in on the third question on the list of questions that will be asked at the April 30th general election, and that is, do you support the decriminalization of the consumption and possession of small amounts of cannabis? Now, again, I might be wrong, but I believe the significant windfall in new registered voters, particularly
I think it was really about the peers, but you know.
You see, again, you're delusional. You really are.
Hey, you know, if you want to just, point at cannabis, fine out.
He'll do anything to carry this conversation right back to where we were for the last hour, but I'm not going to let him.
I'll give you some leverage on that. Go ahead.
Give us a little leverage. Give us a little patience. We have a lot of opportunity, and we're going to discuss, obviously, in great length, all three of the questions and the issues surrounding those questions. Again, as it relates to Cruz birthing infrastructure, we have extended an invitation to the Honorable Deputy Premier, Kenneth Bryan, and we're hoping to hear from him next week on this subject. Likewise, on the greater question of the referendum, the process, the questions to be asked, and how ready the Elections Office will be in order to facilitate those activities. We've also extended an invitation to the Director of Elections, Mr. Wesley Howell, and we hope to inform you at the earliest opportunity we have, in which we've confirmed them as guests. But again, focusing on
I just want to jump in, and of course, I know we're almost out of time. See how time flies for both of us?
We're having fun.
Which means this is probably going to end up being a to be continued.
Oh, it better be a to be continued for at least 4 more episodes.
There you go. But we go all the way up until Friday. But I just wanted to, thank those persons that sent in messages. Again, we apologize that everything's not working here.
Yes.
But coming all the way, I'm assuming, from a Caymanian, all the way in Chile.
Chile.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm glad to see that you're back at it. You all make a great duo. So, again, I want to thank that person, again, texting us all the way from Chile. Go ahead, Mr.
Absolutely.
Harris.
Again, and that's also a good segue for the one avenue in which we have to communicate with you, the listening audience here, today at least. The phone lines are giving us challenges, but we hope to rectify that. We hope to certainly provide solutions on the streaming video as it relates to Facebook and Instagram. But in order to get there, we need at least 100 followers. But again, before that happens, we have to tell you how to reach us on all of these social media platforms. We're working on finalizing those for you. We'll have those issues sorted out by this week. We hope to have the phone lines issue, 745-2626, sorted out as early as tomorrow, because there have been a number of calls that we just simply have not been able to get for technical reasons. But to overcome that, there is a WhatsApp line. We, too, are also having challenges receiving WhatsApp calls. We're going to try to rectify that for tomorrow. What is available to us is sending WhatsApp voice notes. So if you are on WhatsApp, just send a voice note to 928-262-3288. 928-2562. That number again, 928-2562. If you want to offer up a comment or even ask a question on any of the topics in which we're discussing right now on Straight Talk, by all means, you can be a part of that conversation. The voice note, a little more impersonal, obviously removing the opportunity for interaction, your caller and, of course, us as hosts. But what's more important is that your voice, your concerns, your views will be obviously transmitted and added to the conversation. So by all means, send us a voice note in the time remaining to 928-2562, and we will certainly bring you into the conversation. I just want to take a look from the standpoint of what does decriminalization of cannabis or marijuana really mean? It does not mean, and I want to be very clear with this, decriminalization does not mean going from illegal to legal. Decriminalizing does not mean that. It would mean that the legal system would not perhaps prosecute a person for possession under whatever that specified amount is. Again, the question says possession of small amounts of cannabis, but it does not specify what is a small amount. Is it 1 gram? Is it 2 grams? Is it 5 grams? Is it 10 grams? There's that aspect
to be decided.
To be decided. And obviously what the government is looking at here is just a steer. Are you supportive of the government taking this in the direction towards decriminalization?
Correct.
So decriminalization does not make, if there is a yes vote on this referendum question, decriminalization does not mean legal from illegal. It simply would remove marijuana or cannabis or ganja, depending on what your choice of nomenclatures is, from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 2 drug. So instead of going to prison, it could become a misdemeanor. You could have to pay a fine. It could result in community service or a combination of both. But it does not necessarily mean a criminal conviction, imprisonment, which of course has significant negative, if not lifetime, harsh consequences on people. So that's the first case. Now, obviously, the way of the world, well, first of all, decriminalization, what would that mean? Again, we will be presenting the statistics, the hard facts, and we don't have them present because, again, we're just summarizing these conversations today, but we will, throughout the course of the coming weeks, be taking each of these issues individually and presenting the facts as we know them to be, and including them in what will be our public education campaign on these 3 questions. But certainly we believe, let's put it that way, that there are a number of persons who are incarcerated today or persons who have a criminal record today because of simple possession of marijuana, cannabis, or ganja, and what impact that has had not only on them, but certainly ourselves as society. Just as an example, a conviction can lead to persons being able or unable to access scholarships. If you're in school and you want to get a scholarship to university, but you have a criminal conviction for marijuana, cannabis, or ganja, you might not have access to that. Housing, getting a mortgage, employment. An employer doesn't want any criminal record on your record. So again, these are the harsh realities that criminalization or the illegal status of marijuana, cannabis, or ganja is having on people, and how decriminalization might stop that gap.
If I could insert just one thing.
By all means.
To your point, and I think I heard the minister, I hope I don't get him wrong, but he was basically saying that even when the person has that on their record, traveling even overseas for medical purposes, you would be denied.
Yes, quite right, indeed. And that's what a criminal record is. You're applying for a U.S. visa, a British visa, or otherwise. Neither of these agencies like it when you submit on your application. There is, in fact, a criminal conviction. And that reduces your opportunities for travel. And the question is that fair? Is that right? Should everyone be treated like a hardened criminal for, again, possession of small amounts of cannabis, marijuana, or ganja, again, depending on what nomenclature you choose to use? Now, an interesting fact, and this is a fact, and it's not me that says this, but in fact, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, cannabis is safer than alcohol. I'm going to quote from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, in the United States, 95,000 annual U.S. deaths are attributed to the health effects of excessive alcohol use. The CDC does not, however, even have a category for cannabis-induced deaths, but to suggest the fact that they're so minimal, or if not at all, that they haven't created a category for it. It goes on to say, again from the same CDC website, more than 2,000 people die in the United States each year due to alcohol overdoses, according to the CDC. There has, again, direct quote, there has never been a recorded case of a fatal cannabis overdose. Again, not my comments, the medical community. Studies have also shown that alcohol use increases the likelihood of domestic abuse and sexual assault. Cannabis use has not been linked to an increase in either of these crimes. And the only reason I throw that in there is because, you know, these are crimes that are somewhat unfortunately commonplace in our community. And again, full transparency, having some experience with at least one of those, alcohol was a contributing factor. So not only does the question of should we decriminalize small amounts of cannabis, marijuana, ganja, not only does that immediately impact the individual who may be the user from harsher life consequences or penalties, but again, the wider society when choosing whatever vice it is, alcohol or marijuana. Now, again, I will state unequivocally that we are conservative talk radio hosts. The other side of the coin is, should we even be having this discussion? Should we be decriminalizing of any kind? Are we sending the message that smoking marijuana is the message we should be sending to the next generation? This too is an important part of, you know, whether you vote yes or no. Maybe you don't care about the persons who go to prison. Maybe you don't care about the consequences that they pay for the decisions they make, because for every action there's an equal and reaction, an opposite reaction. So you may take that train of thought, but likewise, you must also say, you know, is this something that we want in our community? And I just want to make one final point, that decriminalizing, again, does not change the illegal status to legal, nor does it, I think, and again, this has not been stipulated in the debates or conversations on this topic, but it doesn't mean, let's just assume for a second that, you know, we're on May 1st and the referendum is passed and decriminalization also receives a yes. Doesn't mean that you're going to be allowed to light up, quote unquote, a spliff on the street corner, or when folks are in the smoking room, you can light up a spliff instead of a cigarette. I don't believe that kind of freedom will come with this type of action. But again, we don't know, because that question hasn't been answered yet. Right now, all the government is asking for is a steer.
Point us in the direction.
Which direction you want to go. And I just want to also state that I believe, and I believe I saw the Hansards of the time, but I believe all three of these questions were unanimously supported by, I think, almost all members of the House. There was one or two people that may have abstained and not participated. I think, I want to say the Honorable Premier may have been one of them, but in large majority, the majority of members of existing...
You mean in terms of these three questions being on the referendum?
Being on the referendum.
Yeah, I think...
Again, I will get those Hansards so I can be quoted directly from.
It was 13 votes in favor of going forward with the referendum, which included the Honorable Juliana Connor.
Okay.
And it was only 5 that was against.
All right. And one outside.
And that was the CCP.
Right.
Sorry, TCCP.
TCCP.
And I'm going to have problems with that T, by the way.
Well, you know what? You're going to need to put it in there, because you take that T out of there, they become somebody else altogether.
Oh, okay.
And we won't...
We'll try to remind me.
We'll try to remind you.
But, you know, I just...
You can Wikipedia it, though.
I want to say something while we're getting high in the studio.
We're not getting high in the studio.
Well, sorry. I mean, talking about this...
We're elevating the level of conversation. If that means we're taking it to a higher level.
I'm only teasing.
And they can see us in the video too. If we were doing the opposite,
of course. You know,
no, Mr. Policeman, you do not need to show up at our door. Please don't listen to my colleague.
People are in the traffic. You got to give them something to smile about. You know. But I do want to say that as far as I know, and bear in mind for persons, here's a little bit of information you need to know. Before in Cayman, we had laws. Now that we have a parliament, we have acts. They don't call them laws anymore.
That's a good point. Thank you very much for that.
But yeah, it's a little bit to know. So you had in the old days, we had what was called the Rehabilitation Law, which would now be the Rehabilitation Act. And to the best of my knowledge, and again, part of our research, we'll get the exact numbers, but I believe that under the rehabilitation law, things like marijuana fell away after about 5 years. So in other words, after 5 years, your record was completely clean. It didn't show up anymore. So that is something, again, for persons to bear in mind who might be concerned, again, perhaps trying to give a different side of the argument here. For persons who might be concerned with what happens to these persons who get marijuana in their record and that this is going to destroy their lives, according to what I recall, the rehabilitation law would have removed marijuana smoking and any criminal offense that you incurred after 5 years. So there is that. And I say that because you can see that there's possible other options. You could see that there could be an option that it happens after 2 years.
Right.
And so there's a lot of different options that exist. The government is clearly asking for the public and their vote to point in the direction, do you want to decriminalize it or not? I think I could make the argument that if you decriminalize it, it's just one step in the direction towards legalizing it, because persons now have less of an incentive to not do it. You know, because it's like, yeah, well, if I do smoke it, you know, I'll get a fine as opposed to ruining my life and, you know, being stuck with my record. And so I think when we think about this, people really have to fundamentally ask themselves, and by the way, I will stress this, I mentioned this when I was running a couple of years back, that I think that marijuana carries a purpose. You know, if you even read the Bible, it tells you that, again, the herbs are for the healing of the nation. There is a chance where marijuana can be used, or cannabis should be used medicinally. You know, primarily that should be consumption as if you're eating food.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, they used to give you that in terms of persons who didn't have a good appetite. Then eventually it was replaced with things like periactin, if I have the pronunciation correct. So there is.
You're referring to ganja tea as we know it, so to speak.
The ganja tea.
Yes.
And there was a purpose for that. And again, persons really, in my opinion, simply have to ask themselves, where do I want to go with that? Because I think as you get down there, it's to a point that you're just walking in a specific direction. Whether you want to go there or not is a decision for the public, but I believe that as you decriminalize it, you're definitely walking in the direction where you're basically going to be saying very soon that it's legal, at least some amount of it. And that's a decision that's going to be facing the country on the 3rd of April, 2025. And we intend to have all the discussion, letting you see what it is. But again, to Austin's point, the minister is talking about decriminalization concerning saying that these persons have this record and it precludes them from getting certain jobs, being able to fly even for medical purposes, because you can see, let's pick on the medical purposes. Somebody did something 4 years ago and they're not even smoking marijuana anymore.
Right.
They moved on, they're matured. But that 5 years under the rehabilitation law, if I'm correct, has not come around yet. But they've gotten a serious car accident or some issue, and you're talking about them having to go away for medical purposes. And again, being denied.
Yes.
Simply because at this particular juncture, you know, you haven't finished a 5-year rehabilitation section.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things to consider, lots of interesting discussions for us to have. We want to get onto the issue of gambling. I remember while I was in office, we looked at the whole issue of national lottery. It was saying at the time, as my memory serves me right, that the country could make an additional $12 million from it. Again, I think this is an interesting topic, because one of the things I keep saying when I was a lawmaker, for the want of a better word, is that you need to look at the other side of the balance sheet. You can talk about how much revenues you make, for example, from tobacco.
Yeah.
But let's get the other side of the balance sheet.
How much you're spending to treat tobacco-related illnesses.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
And then that's the only way as a business, or whatever you want to look at it, that you actually see, well, is that really paying off or not?
Yeah, quite right.
And you again, I think it's kind of a slippery slope, in my personal opinion, when it comes to the smoking of marijuana. But that is a decision for the public to decide now.
Indeed.
So all of these votes are going to be very, very important.
Yes.
Coming up very soon.
Yes.
Now, I know we're going to have a hard stop, right? Because we're professionals on this thing here.
Yeah,
No?
so we
6:24, right?
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes before we have to take our final break. But just certainly, again, bookending your conversation there, these are just aspects of the wider conversation and public education that we intend to host on these 3 referendum questions. But why we've picked it over politics, well, obviously, we're going to leave the politicians, in particular the new candidates, until after nomination day. Right now, we still have a government until March the 3rd Then there will be nomination day. That's when all of those persons who will be contesting seats in the upcoming elections, if they haven't already come out, they will come out. And then, of course, will mark the beginning of the silly season. But it is your host's opinion that of equal importance as choosing who your representatives will be and who the next government potentially could be, equally important are answering the questions being asked in the referendum. And our goal will be, at least for the first 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on those 3 questions and engaging in a public education campaign on what are some of the finer moving points of each of these questions. Earlier, I heard for about an hour our conversation on cruise birthing. We were just chatting very briefly on the decriminalization of small amounts of cannabis. And I just want to pick up where you left off in terms of smoking versus consuming versus the properties, because there's also the whole medical marijuana aspect as well. I mean, we decriminalize perhaps small amounts of possession and consumption, but there are aspects of what parts of this plant, and there are 2 basic parts, as we talked about before. There's CBD and THC. CBD, cannabinoids. Yeah, there's a.
You sound like a doctor.
Austin. I know. It's terrible. But anyway, this is CBD. That is the medical component of it. That's the oil that many persons, particularly cancer patients, are using. Some will argue, and I have a friend, he will remain nameless, who was diagnosed with cancer, took the CBD route, albeit not in Cayman, but in another jurisdiction, and praise God, he's cancer-free today, whereas modern science had given him an expiration date, and that was like, a few months to live using
and I heard the same thing about seizures, different things.
So there are a number of proven, scientifically documented and proven benefits that are derived from this. This is not just an opinion, it is a fact. The CBD portion of it is the medical side, and then the THC side of it is the more, hallucinogenic, i.e. intoxicating factor of it, which you experience.
You're burning it.
Yeah, when you're burning it. It's a plant. It just so happens to be, it grows like that. If you happen to set it on fire, there are some effects, as my favorite.
Slightly different.
Slightly different meaning. But these are all discussions that we will be having, and we are going to have, and we're looking forward to having our phone lines working so that we can have these discussions, not just with each other. And I do love talking to you, ELlio.
Yeah,
but I'd much rather, extend this conversation to our listening audience and bring them into the fold as well.
Definitely want to get them involved.
We are going to be working. We thank those callers who worked with us, those callers who, again, tried to reach us on the phone lines and prove to us that we still have a few kinks to work out. But we hope by tomorrow to have our phone lines working so we can engage in some immediate dialogue. To those who contributed on the WhatsApp line, we certainly do appreciate it. But 30 seconds left. Opportunity for some closing remarks.
I just want to say I want to thank you all very much. I know many of you tried calling and getting through to us. Like Austin has said, we'll definitely work the kinks out over the next couple of days. And thank you for welcoming us back. And it's happy to be back together as a wonderful team. Make this your new favorite station. Spread the word. 89.1 FM. Your favorite host, Austin and ELlio, right here on Straight Talk.
And Bobo FM. See you guys tomorrow, 4:30, right here on Bobo FM.
The BBC on Bobo. This is the BBC World Service. Across Cayman on Bobo FM. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
At Integra Healthcare, we're proud to offer the services of 2 expert dermatologists with extensive UK consultant experience. Our dermatologists specialize in skincare detection and management, general dermatology, pediatric dermatology, skin lesion evaluation, skin cancer identification, and a full range of clinical dermatology conditions. For appointments, you can visit integra.ky/dermatology or call 745-7450. Dermatology care as it should be.
At Polar Bear Air Conditioning, we believe in helping you to avoid costly mistakes and replacements. That's why we offer a quarterly maintenance program at a discounted price. You'll receive a 10% discount on all repairs, accessories, and services. Priority front-of-the-line customer status, reminders of your service, and no overtime rate for after-hours calls. Why not save money and avoid hassle with Polar Bear Air Conditioning? Need service now? Book our AC special for just $99. Book the next available technician at polarbear.ky. That's polarbear.ky.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
we just don't understand how you can afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3 gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shetton Road, and in the Strand.
The KFC What a Deal value meals. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices.
KFC, so good.
We all work hard to one day buy the house of our dreams. Why wouldn't you protect it? With Saxon, you now have the option to get a home insurance quote online. Avoid the waiting in lines and the traffic. Simply log on to saxon.ky and click to get a quote to get started. At Saxon, we pride ourselves on providing our customers with excellent customer service and convenience. So what are you waiting for? Visit saxon.ky today from the comfort of your home or office to get your quote and protect the things you love. Saxon. Smart Insurance.
Have your engine driving like never before with Pure 93, the highest pure octane fuel in Cayman and available exclusively at Rubis service stations. Pure 93 protects against engine knock, restores lost power and acceleration, cleans fuel injectors, intake valves, removes engine deposits, improves your fuel economy, and it meets international specification requirements for your car. Fill up with Pure 93 now and keep your engine running like new. Fuel the difference with Pure 93, available exclusively at Rubis.
Shirts, pants, or linens. When you want them clean, just drop them off at Island Cleaners. Island Cleaners is a full-service dry cleaner, meaning you name it, they clean it. Professional shirt service, fluff and fold laundry, and more. Even drape and area rug cleaning and alterations, from quick hem jobs to resizing dresses. Island Cleaners, your one stop for everything clean. Artco Drive off Shetton Road. Ask about VIP and prepaid discounts.
This is Mobo FM, powered by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care, located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Mobo FM. Now, let's rejoin the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Dashiani Navanayagam and welcome to The Conversation from the BBC World Service, the programme which speaks to two extraordinary women from around the world about the incredible things they're doing. Today, my guests both work in the field of prosthetics, but under very different circumstances. Olga Rudneva is from Ukraine. She founded the Superhumans Trauma Centre in Lviv following Russia's invasion. It fits prosthetic limbs to patients who've been wounded during the war. And British inventor Kate Allen joins me in the studio. When she was just a student, she designed a prosthetic arm that can grow with children's limbs. Her company Expand now provides prosthetic arms to children with limb difference and helps give them back their independence. A very warm welcome to you both, Kate and Olga.
Thank you very much.
Before we go into the incredible work you both do, Kate, it would be really helpful for you to explain exactly what a prosthetic is.
Yeah, no problem. So a prosthetic is almost like a man-made body part that you can fit to someone that might not have a body part that is currently missing, or something that you can just add on to provide additional function where someone might need additional help or would like to just gain more functionality than what they currently can do.
And can anyone have one?
So depending on what the prosthetic is, it could be applied to anyone. So the prosthetics that I make are for people who have a limb difference. So we work with upper limbs. So maybe if someone has part of their forearm, we can provide them with the additional length in their forearm as well as providing them with a hand. But there are loads of different types of prosthetics that you can get. So hip replacements are also a type of prosthetic. You could also get replacements which are purely cosmetic, so maybe an ear or a nose. So not everyone will need them, but everyone could one day be the recipient of one.
Now, Olga, before you set up Superhumans, you spent almost 20 years working in the field of HIV and AIDS and charity work. What inspired you to set up Superhumans Trauma Centre?
Well, I guess the word inspired is not the best word, because the Superhuman Center is something that shouldn't exist, like the wars shouldn't exist. So we raised out of demand because, with a full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022, me and my partners realized that it's going to be a lot of people who will be losing their limbs. And when we are speaking about people in Ukraine, it's young guys and girls who are 25, 35 at the very beginning of their life. we had to react. We had to do something for those people who fight it for our country, who lost parts of their body, and who deserves a normal life, who deserves an active life, who wants to go back, have kids, walk with their children, holding their hands, and, have a run again. So that's why we decided that should be Superhuman Center.
Did you have any experience in prosthetics before you went into this?
Zero. Absolutely. I knew nothing about prosthetics. And, the moment we came up with the idea, I said, I'm in, because I wanted to do something meaningful during the war times for Ukraine and to kind of, help the victory. So I was like, I'm in. What do I know about prosthetics? Nothing. So I opened YouTube and I Googled TED Talk prosthetics, like all good managers do.
And how easy was it for you to set up this? Because, like you said, you're doing this in the middle of a war as well.
We started with nothing. We started with the idea. We want to do that. And we grew up out of the team of 5 people to the team of 300 people. And first we thought it's going to be just a prosthetic lab, and we're going to provide people with prosthesis. And then we realized it's not enough. We have to have psychological support, because we have to prepare the person that he or she going to have an artificial limb. Then we have to teach this person to walk, to run, to do, difficult exercises. Even when he or she falls down, she needs to get up. So we added psychological support. Then we added rehabilitation. And at a certain point, we realized it doesn't matter how good is your prosthesis. It could be out of gold. But if you don't have reason to leave your apartment, you probably won't be wearing your prosthesis. So we added one more service, which is social reintegration. And we are helping our patients to find new roles in life, to find new jobs, or to be engaged in sports, because they need to have a reason to wear their prosthesis, to leave apartment, and to do something. And you have to have a dream, because it's going to be a very long path to recovery. So you have to have a dream of what you want to do with your limb. And our superhumans are coming up with like, I want to walk with my kid. I want to play football. I want to hug my beloved ones. I want to do a proposal, and I want to do that with my own arm, with my own fingers. I want to cook, and stuff like that. And when someone has a dream which is just bigger than just simply stand on my two, that helps in the rehabilitation process.
Kate, you also came up with your idea of a prosthetic arm, but where did your interest in prosthetics come from?
Yeah, so my interest in prosthetics themselves came from knowing a family friend, really. So her daughter was born with a limb difference, and so that really got me looking into prosthetics, and particularly prosthetics that are available for children, what they look like and what they really could be. So I started looking at what was already available, what was on the market, and then found out that really, in my eyes, one of the big things that was limiting children's prosthetics was the fact that they were a fixed size. And so children are growing so quickly that they were growing out of their prosthetics before they stopped being useful in themselves. And so I then set myself the challenge to try and make a prosthetic that would be able to grow with you, so that your prosthetic could last for longer, that you could get used to that prosthetic and then be able to carry on using it.
How difficult was it for you to develop your design?
So this initially started in my 3rd year of university. So it was my dissertation project that then went on to become my master's project, that then became a full-on business of its own. And so the initial design for a prosthetic arm kind of came quite naturally, because there's not too much different that you can do when you're looking at sort of how to attach it to someone's body, and then what you want it to look like and what you want it to do. And so I had decided to go down the mechanical prosthetics route, so looking at something that